Mm. Little sip of a nice amber beer. Cold winds are blowing in, which is definitely fucking up my allergies, but it is nice to maybe see the horizon of fall coming down. So we're coming at you live, of course. This is Against the Mob podcast. Logan Carpenter, Matthew Billingsley, live here from Islamikota, our new province in between Donbass and Ukraine, which I'm not sure we actually even got that episode up with our technical.
I did.
Piece of it. Oh, you did. Look at you.
I did. I told you I would. I did, Logan. Gone are the days of my empty and hollow promises.
Well, good. I'm glad you got maybe my best recorded joke ever, or best recorded, maybe not even joke, maybe foreign policy pitch of all time on the interwebs for me. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
hopefully
no
it'll
problem.
enter the ears of our future Trump-appointed foreign affairs official, Dennis Rodman, I would assume, with all the crazy ones we got going on.
Ambassador Rodman, you mean? Put some
Ambassador
respect
Rodman.
on it.
Ambassador of North Korean affairs.
Put some respect on it.
You know, as odd as that is, I say that jokingly because I was trying to think of a ridiculous name. Hasn't been the worst ambassador. Like,
I mean,
Rodman's done a reasonable job of helping relations with North Korea.
it could be way worse. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, they were really impressed with his piercings and the way he can twirl the ball and his shooty hoop skills. And if that's what it takes to humanize Americans to that pariah state, well, then God bless Ambassador Rodman.
I never really thought of it in that kind of framing. But you have a country of malnourished people who are like 5'2" on average that are all required to have one of 6 haircuts and are incredibly impoverished. And we sent over a 6'8" black man with crazy colored hair like they've never seen before, wearing extravagant golden jewelry. Like, of course he was a marvel to them. They've never seen anything like Rodman before. Like, well, holy shit, man.
To be fair, I'm not sure Americans have either.
That's a fair point as well. He is a one-of-one print for sure. There's not a lot of Dennis Rodmans walking around. There's a lot of really sad-looking people who want to look like Dennis Rodman. Like, there's a lot of Johnny Depp clones out there. I'm sure you've seen this. Like the guy who wears a million bracelets and has like a half of a leather vest on for some reason, and the long
I got
hair.
you.
And it works if you're like a famous actor who's in good shape. But if you're like 50 pounds overweight and you're just some emo kid in the middle of Texas, you're like, dude, what are you trying to pull off here?
Makes sense. Nothing good. So what are we talking about, Logan? So we're 6 days out from the presidential election. I guess let me ask you a question. Do you think that let's call it a week from today, Wednesday evening, when we're live streaming, do you think that we will have the results in? Do you think there will be a new king crowned for the empire? Or do you think that they'll still be, when do you think we're going to know?
It's going to go like the last couple of elections have gone, where we stay up all night and at 5 a.m. we finally give up and go to sleep. And then in 3 days or so, we finally get some kind of clarity with a bunch of backlash on both sides about how it wasn't fair. No, they're already getting in front of this. Classic Maricopa County is already like putting out feeler articles to get ahead of the story, saying like it will take us a couple weeks to get it counted, guys. Like, it's not going to be right away. So even the worst offenders are already trying to get ahead of the story a little bit because they know they're not going to have their shit together. I don't know. This just seems like the way this goes now. Like, when's the last election we knew the day of? I guess it would have been before I was paying attention to politics.
I actually
guess it was happening then, but I'm not even positive.
I'm going to take a look.
Again, I wasn't paying attention to politics, but yeah, it seems like this is the new pattern of it. We have an election. We call each other Nazis on the lead up to it. We make as much cultural civil unrest as possible by calling the other side Nazis and gearing them up for a stolen election. And then we deny for 4 years until it's time for another election. So I wouldn't expect any clear and concise resolution to this within the first couple days.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All of these articles are not helpful at all. Nothing. There's nothing in a quick DuckDuckGo search that shows anything helpful whatsoever.
Yeah, I wonder I mean, I guess you would have to go at least back to before Bush Gore because we were
That
challenging
yeah.
Nixon, Putin, and I
Um,
don't know that it wasn't happening before that either. You know,
I wonder what the
it's part
do
of
you
the
remember
fun. Of course,
2008? Do you remember if that one was called?
I
I don't even
don't
know how to
really
find
remember.
that
I mean, I
actually.
was 18 years old, about to graduate high school at the time.
Mm,
I was just trying to figure out like where the next alcohol was for me to consume at that point in my life. There wasn't really a whole lot of thought on election. I think my deepest thought on the 2008 election was like, oh shit, the black guy won. Like maybe we're not quite as racist of a country as I might have painted us to be. That's kind of cool, I guess.
that's fair. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let me see if I can find
Because
the
I definitely,
results.
being in West Texas at the time in a predominantly white school, and the only people not white in that school were
Me.
farmers and ranchers of Mexican descent, and also Matthew was the one outsider.
Me? You mean?
There was a lot of conservative sentiment in that high school, and so I guess I was a little bit surprised to see Obama win in general. But yeah, I like to think I didn't have the worst reaction to it. I think I remember thinking like, oh, that's interesting. Look at
Right.
that.
It could be worse.
The
Mm,
CIA decided we're not so racist to write about the public candidate that they choose.
yeah. No, I mean he was a political animal, as we've said before.
Yeah,
I
there's
couldn't find anything
clearly an
meaningful.
acumen for it.
Because I know that last year, or I guess last election, 4 years ago, it was called on the Saturday. So it was 5 days after. Yeah, they called it on like Saturday afternoon. So, I don't know. You would think though that shouldn't shouldn't we be able to do it in a day? You know what I mean? I don't know why it would take so long.
This is one of the kind of subcategories I wanted to get into, and kind of the overarching conversation, just to break the fourth wall and let you guys in real quickly. Uh, we were both kind of poo-pooing the idea after spending 2 or 3 years on here talking about how this could be absolute chaos when the election happens, and neither side's going to believe the result, no matter who loses. They're not going to buy it. We kind of came to the conclusion last week of like, well, you know what? Maybe we need to pump the brakes on this. Like, do people really have anything outside of rhetoric? Like, we love to have this social media reaction about talking about getting the pitchforks and the guns out, and it's time to water the tree of liberty with the blood of tyrants and patriots again. But
Preach.
is anybody actually like ready to take any action or willing to take any action and put at risk what they have going on, even if it is under a regime they don't like? And we kind of landed a little more on the cautious side. But I think maybe just with the election getting closer and with things like a couple ballot boxes going up in flames, and just the way the rhetoric people are like, I had a friend of mine look me in the eyes and tell me how to get to his ranch the other day very earnestly. And at first I was kind of laughing it off. And I realized like, oh, this isn't a joke. He's literally letting me know how to get to his ranch if we turn into Civil War II and it's time for me to get away from the city kind of thing, which I do greatly appreciate as an option. not
It
not
is good.
poo-pooing that at all. But it just kind of gave me a reevaluation period of like, people are a little squirrelier than I might have put on last week, and what do we think the potential for violence and unrest after this election uh, happens to be? And there was a question that you started that whole rant with that I didn't answer. What did you ask me?
Oh, when do you think we'll know?
Oh, I thought there was something else you asked me. Uh, yeah, I mean it's I don't think we're seeing anything. Oh, is about the clarity of the election being a subcategory of this, that it, and we said this 4 years ago. Like, wouldn't it behoove you, especially as I believe, as somebody who doesn't necessarily believe in uh, free elections, free and fair elections actually ever happening, and believes in a good amount of control by this deep state entity and the CIA in particular, uh, wouldn't it kind of behoove them to at least go through the motions of proving out this is a fair and free election and doing things like making sure Maricopa County doesn't take 5 days to count all their votes when they're one of the most important counties and everybody's staring at them? And it's like, can we not allocate some resources to this to make it at least look like it's an efficient system? Uh,
Yeah.
Ballot burning is another. I mean, when there's things going up in flames and you're seeing both sides already. I mean, of course, a little more from the right because this was their narrative to begin with, but there's people already kind of pointing out the cheating in the election. Here's this person that was dropping off ballots late at night. This guy was messing with this box. There's officials we don't trust. I know somebody got arrested literally for ballot drop-offs, I think, in the 2020 election kind of recently, and that's been running the circuit in conservative media because here's somebody we've proven it was cheating in the last election. And it's always kind of like, well, to what extent? What does that mean? Do we really believe that both sides aren't doing shady stuff? I know that Oregon and Washington's where most of the headlines I saw of these ballot boxes being burned are, but I believe I saw that this happened also in a conservative state. So it's like, is it not just happening in complete chaos on both sides? And would it not eventually come down to you as the governing body of this democracy to go, hey, we can't have mail-in ballots that get dropped off like baby at the fire station that you don't want, I guess, late at night? That, like, there has to be some level of security to the system, and right now we just have too much up in the air. I've seen several posts of people, one from Canada and one from a European, who like said they just applied for foreign ballots. So just like, hey, I'm an American in another country, and they got sent one. They're like, I've never been an American citizen. One of them said he never lived in America, and they filled out an American ballot. Both of them were voting for Trump in their own post as they admitted this, but it's still just like, yeah, there's clearly a lot of room for squirrely activity in the middle, and you would think that it would benefit the power to prove to the citizenry that is in, especially if that citizenry is, by all reports, getting ready to revolt out of distrust for the system, that you would do something to restore said trust.
Yeah, I wonder. I've been chewing on how to try to still man that argument about why, like, mail-in ballots, that's bullshit. I don't, you know what I mean? I've tried to understand why somebody would think that universal mail-in ballots is a good thing. Why having to show voter ID is a bad thing. I just don't understand. I mean, the only thing that I could think about is that you're trying to cheat. I don't I
Right.
don't know
Yeah,
why
it's the
else you would
explanation.
ever
I
want.
can't open my fucking iPhone without facial recognition technology.
Yeah, I
If
can't
I get
do
bashed in
anything.
the face, I can't even open my phone anymore.
It's yeah, I don't understand it. There's almost nothing that I can do of any importance in this country without having to prove who I am. I mean, even today I had I got new debit cards, and I had to renew my Sirius subscription, and I had to verify who I was to the, you know what I mean, for them to charge me money. They wouldn't
Yeah,
just,
for
oh,
spend
you
your
know
own
what
money.
I mean? It's like I had to prove who I am for them to take money from me. And so why would you not have to prove who you are to, I just don't understand it. I really don't. Um
It's weird too, even in the rhetoric of both sides around this, and maybe that's kind of just where we are as a civilization right now. We're so minutely focused on these tiny political battles that everything becomes immediately politicized. So like it what would the argument be to not having a more secure election process? And the answer is because the Democrats told me that that's a Republican talking point, essentially. And I'm not allowed to
yeah.
agree with
Yeah, probably. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. I don't understand why anybody wouldn't want that. And something that kind of blows my mind about liberals, and I've been chewing on this often or late as of late, is that they look to European countries and they say, oh, well, they have this and they do it this way. But it's like Europe's not as tolerant as Americans think that they are. It's like, try getting into Europe. It's not easy. You don't just get to stroll in there and they're like, oh, hey, we're glad that you're here. Stay as long as you'd like. When I studied abroad over there, it was very straight. It's like, your visa ends today, and you must, and it's like you're no longer allowed to be here anymore.
it.
Like, your student
And have
visa's
no
over.
more spaghetti over here in this country.
It's, and because I tried to never come back home. I was gonna get this job in Munich for the summer and then work for the company I was interning with come the next semester. And the people in Munich wouldn't hire me because they weren't going to be able to process my work visa soon. There's going to be a lapse, and like, sorry, man, well, we don't know what to do for you because you're
Right.
not. And they're like, and we can't,
We're
like,
not
I don't
looking
know.
for entry level employees 6 months from now if they get their visa straightened out.
Or
That's
there was gonna be, like, a 3-week period, but it's also they're like, and I was talking with the Italian and I'm sure I could have figured it out, but essentially it's gonna cost you money, and you're not allowed to be here anymore after that day, and so it's You got to
We
go
can
home.
definitely have somebody trained by the time you get that straightened out, and he already
Exactly.
speaks German as well. So
And that was pretty much how it all. But people that think that, oh, Europe is so tolerant, and they're really not. I mean, you want to talk about racist? Just get on a train and watch them interact with gypsies, and tell me that Europe's not racist. All right, uh, and 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 all of this concept though,
well,
and
racist though implies that you're like against a certain subset of your own species, whereas gypsies are probably closer to like orcs or
yes, step one: dehumanize the target.
dehumanized. Yeah.
Dehumanize the outgroup. Wonderful. We're on our way. But and also it's like Europe's vote, you know what I mean? Europe's not they don't have laissez-faire voting when it comes to who can and there's no all of these Syrian refugees in Germany, they don't no one's they're not letting all of these people that flooded in the country just have a say. And so I don't understand why unless it's just because you want to cheat. That's the only reason I can think of. You just want to cheat.
Maybe it's moreover, rather than a desire to cheat, is a desire for ambiguity. Because
Hmm.
if we truly knew, for example, 20% of the votes tallied in every election for both sides were automated or fake, and what does that look like when all of a sudden the voter turnout's not 60%, but it's more like 40%?
Well,
That
do you
there's a
think that
majority of America that actually doesn't approve of the system so much that they're not even bothering to vote on election
mm,
day.
well, that is true. I mean, half the half of the population that can vote does not vote. But do you really think it's like 20% is fraudulent?
I'm just throwing a number out there. I
Oh,
mean, I have
okay,
no
I got
idea.
you. I
I don't
got
I
you.
don't have any quantification for how much of it is fraudulent. I definitely think a lot of sketchy stuff's happening on both sides. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious, especially from, or at least especially as I frame it when I'm talking to my Republican leaning friends when they can't believe this last election was stolen. Is like, why don't you think that anything was done about this then? Why don't you think that there was way more of a stink in Congress about rounding up these loopholes to make sure the Democrats don't cheat again? And I think the very obvious reason that you don't see any Republicans standing on a soapbox screaming about that is because they're probably just as guilty of all the same things. So they don't really want to shine a spotlight on that.
That's fair. I mean, there's fraud in every election. There has to be. No election system's perfect. I guess the real question does hinder on like, was there enough fraud to overturn the results? That's kind of the big one. I did see some pretty interesting some polls that came out today, and Trump's coming to New Mexico, which is fascinating to me because you only go to a place if you think that it's in
I think you can
play.
win. Huh.
And I don't know if New Mexico is like
They're
as
looking at the retirement age in Texas and seeing how many of them move over to New Mexico every
yeah, yeah,
year.
right.
Hey,
It's
maybe it's time.
maybe yeah, you never know. I don't know what, and of course, I mean, they've spent millions of dollars on this information and they have their own strategies, but the fact that he is actually going to spend a day or at least pop into New Mexico in the next 6 days out of all of the places that he could go, it says something. I don't know if it says everything, but it says something.
That's interesting. I believe Kamala was just in Texas 2 days ago.
Oh yeah, she was down in Houston. I
Hmm.
wonder I wonder, do they think that Texas is
I
in
think
play?
Texas is up for grabs.
I
Maybe
think
so. And there's been and I actually had it was actually a more left leaning friend of mine that kind of put this in my head that, and at first I was kind of like, come on, why else would they be letting everybody into the country? But uh, a good amount of immigrants that come into this country are actually very conservative leaning too. So
yes.
even at that, like, oh, let's just open up the floodgates of the border to get more Democrat voters in is probably not like the best long term solution to their political side when you consider like maybe you get them the election they come in when you gave them a check and you told them, hey, this is from Joe Biden, or at least you scratched out Biden's name on the top of the check
You
and put
put
Kamala
Harris.
Harris next to it, and let them know that, hey, this is a guy that gave you the handout. But even at that, I mean, a lot of the rhetoric and a lot of the kind of the machismo culture of a lot of South America and specifically Mexico doesn't really vibe with the Democratic ticket, and maybe they feel obligated to leave the border open, but I think I've heard the sentiment maybe even more often that like, no, fuck it, I'm here. I don't want this whole country to go become South America. Like, I want to close the gate behind me. Let's draw the bridge back up.
I just got away
Hey,
from one of those.
you guys get out of my fucking country.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Just where people are spending their money and the just the movement. I don't know. I'm so interested in this, and I know that most people aren't in like the weeds and the movement of points. And I know polls are not perfect, and they're not predictors. They're just snapshots. I think one of the probably the biggest indicator that Trump has all the momentum is that there's so much money pouring in on him. And I've heard people call in to some of these shows and be like, "Well, I will bet you I'll bet you whatever amount of money you want that Kamala Harris is going to win." And these hosts are just like, "Hey, you can go." It's like Vegas will take your money because
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
because if you look at the odds, a lot of people think that you're wrong. So if you're that like go lose your money if you really think that, or go double or go triple your money, because I think that's probably the biggest indicator, because who wants to lose? No one. Like gamblers aren't. You know what I mean? They're not just throwing their money away. Well, that's not true. Actually,
There's
I
plenty of
got.
them that are.
Oh yeah, no,
To your
that
credit,
there
though,
is
when
actually
it
no. I
comes
was about to
to
say
sharks and like the big name guys,
Vegas.
like
Vegas is
there
not
is
throwing
a
those odds around willy nilly.
right. Yeah, there's a reason they've shifted on it, and it's not just because of the money. It's also because of an inevitability that they see, maybe not inevitability, likelihood that they see. Yeah, I've been watching those odds move, and it was very even, maybe as far as a month ago, and almost every day that I check, Trump gets another -5 on his name, which is not significant, but I mean, we're looking at what was a dead even race, and I just
Hmm.
looked at it now, and Trump's -205,
Oh, I was just about to check. Cool.
which is not insane. Like it's totally within the realm of possibility for it to go either way. But for example, let's see what NFL teams. It's
What's the
about.
likelihood the Chargers make it?
I was just about to say it's the Chargers are less likely to beat the Browns than Kamala is to beat Trump.
Oh,
So Trump's more likely to beat Kamala according to the odds than the Chargers are to beat the Browns,
the Browns.
which is a
Damn.
toss-up game. That's
Damn.
got his allegiance for the Chargers. That's why it hurt his feelings there.
Damn. That hurts. Shit.
It's the Jameis Winston effect, man.
I guess
They
so.
got that.
Man,
They
that's
got that sexual assault case off their hands. All of a sudden, they're playing football again.
something like that. That's wild to actually to know like what? What? The Browns?
Your team's odds of defeating the Cleveland Browns, the perpetual shitty Brown. I heard they're actually debuting a new helmet this week where they're just putting the brown shit emoji on the side of their helmet.
Oh, that's very fitting. The Browns, I guess that does put in perspective though. That's wild. I would have thought the Chargers had a much better chance than that. I guess that shows.
Not according to draft.
Well, I mean, Vegas knows. Anyways, that's damn. I can't get past that. I'm trying to like gloss over it. But
It's really stuck with you.
Damn.
I was trying to find. I'll see. So it's about the same odds. The Eagles are slightly more likely to beat the Cowboys than Trump is to beat Kamala. Which that seems like a good betting opportunity if you've not been watching any football. That maybe just take the Eagles plus the points there or minus the points. I've been watching a lot of Cowboys football, and I got to tell you, I got more faith in Kamala Harris than I do the Cowboys at this point.
Yeah, that's fair. Not to digress down the sports rabbit hole, because we could easily just spend the next hour talking about that.
Bitching about our terrible football teams.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, the fact that Vegas has that much money and the odds do favor, I think it's like I said, it doesn't say everything, but it says something that he's going to New Hampshire, he's going to Minnesota, he's coming to New Mexico. It's really, if you could steal what, you know what I mean? Like if he could steal New Mexico, we don't even have that many. We're just 5 electoral votes. But I heard somebody lay out.
Anytime an election's this close, where you're looking at like these thin of margins to turn any state a different color, that's not a swing state is a big deal. Even
Oh,
if it's a few,
absolutely. Yeah, that's it. It
it's
is.
devastating.
It is really interesting. Yeah.
It's kind of like the
So
Trump with the black vote thing, where you look at it and you're like, well, like 25% of black men support Trump. That doesn't seem like a lot. And you're like, oh no, it's been 0% for every election up
right.
until this one. That's why they're terrified of that.
So he got 8% of the black vote in 2020. 8%. And I've seen some people say it's as high as 15% that he might be able to take. I mean, that is enough to just crush an election.
Do you think this is a product of mixing racial demographics and all these black men getting white conservative girlfriends over time?
I actually have no idea because I have my to ask me about what the pulse of Black society and Black America is doing.
I did get caught by a black friend of mine saying something about like, oh, none of y'all have any other black friends with me anyway. And I was like, no, the guy I do the podcast with is black. And he goes, come on, like, is he black though? And I was like, no, you're right. You're definitely right. I'm going to back off that point immediately. You caught me. I was cheating.
Is he really? It's like, no, he's not.
You're right. I'm about to stand by that statement for more than 5 seconds.
I'm about to say, yeah, that's a hill I cannot die on. You may have this one, sir.
I'm going to concede this argument. Well done, sir.
Yeah, and you would be lying if you stood on that argument.
I knew better. It rang completely false as he challenged me on it. I was like, "Yep, that you're right."
Right?
You're
Yeah,
right,
Jeff,
sir.
I'm full of shit.
You asked the one follow up I don't have an answer for.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you with this. I mean, we're clearly sitting on a powder keg right now, and everybody's a little bit fidgety about it. Going back to kind of your argument that you like to bring up of the like, you got to think of these things as features rather than bugs. When we're looking at why wouldn't they do anything to make this election seem more clear? Could that potentially be one of the explanations that I laid out that, hey, like it's more about keeping it ambiguous because they don't want you to actually see the numbers, because we might all kind of go like, oh, wow, there's actually not this amazing popular support for Democrats or Republicans. But could another part of that be that they kind of want a little bit of unrest within this election?
That is a good thought that I've never really entertained. But as soon as you start saying it, yeah, I can follow you down this rabbit hole, right? So if you take the history of how America has treated other elections in other countries, where we go in, you cause a little bit of chaos. What happens? Somebody declares victory, the other side doesn't like it, and sometimes you get military coups out of it. I'm not saying that is the play here, but I don't know if it's the most far-fetched idea ever that you do want chaos so that you could deploy the National Guard. You could deploy all of these crackdown measures against it. I think that that's probably like a less than 5% chance that is what is actually happening, but it's not. It's a non-zero chance. I think that
Yeah, it's
it
a
could
little bit
definitely be
of
out there.
like, hey, January 6th was a little bit of a hit for the establishment. If you buy into the narrative that we spin about, like, it sure does seem like it was at the very least heavily encouraged by those members of government within that crowd to take place so that they could pass a lot of legislation afterwards and even try to probably get Trump off the ballot, being a little bit of that plan by demonizing him and painting him an insurrectionist.
Yeah, that's it. Tried to make an insurrectionist.
So maybe there is a little bit of that, and I mean, I guess it's playing with fire a little bit, because if you're maybe you really need the initial powder keg because it's a little more of a long fight if people don't believe it and they keep talking about fake elections and how this didn't actually go down and they just installed so and so. Maybe you are kind of hoping for the civil march that can enact a martial law type of reaction and shut it down and throw those people in prison and go like, okay, we washed our hands of that. Everybody's clear on the rules here. If you challenge this election, you are going to jail. You're not having that.
I also wonder too about that plan and how feasible it is, because I think there's just so many unknowns. Like like, what do you think how the National Guard might respond? There's so many questions because that's the thing is if you want those crackdowns or those revolutions to turn, like eventually you've got to get the military either to go outside and shoot civilians or to turn around and say, no, we're actually with the civilians. And I don't have a feel one way or another, like how American military units would respond to being deployed on American soil, being told to crack down. I think that is such an unknown to me that
Again, maybe it helps a little bit if that's the scenario you're trying to enact. It's probably a lot easier to get them to jump to action on a split second based on an emergency. It's like, hey, shit's going down. Get in the vehicle right now. We have to deploy. We have to stabilize the American election right now.
Yeah.
Probably less time to think about your ideology and how secure you feel about this election than it is if you're enacting martial law.
Which is totally fair. But those people are going to have to go to sleep. And that's where, and so like in the Russian Revolution, that was kind of one of the big tipping points. So it's like, yeah, the first day the military went out there and they set up machine gun nets and they tore down civilians, and then they went home that night and they slept, and they all woke up the next morning like, dude, we have to go back out there and do that again. And that's where, and so like the first like battalion or company that killed their officer and said, no, we're actually not, and we're going out there with the people. That's where like they're waiting to deploy again that morning. They're like, dude, we can't go out there and do this again. That was crazy. That was, and so yeah, like I do understand your point that you got to make the move quickly. There's not enough time to think, but they're gonna go to sleep and they're gonna have to wake up and be like, damn, we got to do this again
in one day.
Exactly. We're gonna have to go out there again and do this, or it's going to be a prolonged operation, and that's where probably the opportunity, if there would be any sort of like rebellion of the military against government orders, where it would present itself.
So that kind of brings me to a clip I wanted to share with you. Have you seen Tucker talking at Madison Square Gardens?
I have not. Is this where he says daddy's coming home and going to spank the children for being naughty?
Okay. So a little bit of that. I'll show you here.
Not even the obvious ones, but the big lie. You know what the big lie is? The big lie is that they're impressive. That's what the big lie is. People in charge have somehow earned the right to rule over you, and they haven't. And you know that. These are the single most useless people in the United States. They have no skills whatsoever. They've got 3/4 of the money, and they didn't earn it. They set up a system precisely for the purpose of awarding themselves wealth and power when it's undeserved. You look at Liz Cheney and you ask yourself honestly, what skill could she possibly have that allowed her to send hundreds of thousands of people to their deaths? Did she earn that? I don't think she did. No fair system would make Liz Cheney powerful. No fair system would make Larry Fink rich. No fair system would elevate someone like Kamala Harris to a presidential nomination. She's never been accused of doing anything useful. She has precisely no achievements. She's a nominee without getting a single vote. She is a metaphor for the system they created to make themselves rich and powerful. And then they have the gall to lecture you, the people who can actually change a flat tire and repair a power grid, who have useful jobs, who pay your taxes and work 40 hours a week, lecture you that you are somehow immoral. And Donald Trump has empowered the rest of us through mostly just sticking around in the face of their hate and abuse and persecution. He has given the rest of us the right to call BS on the charade. No, you are not better than us. No, you are not smarter than us. No, you do not deserve what you have. You probably stole it. No, you're not going to bully me into silence anymore. And I can promise you at this point, 9 days out, when Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Elon Musk and Tulsi Gabbard and pretty much every high school senior and college shorty girl in the country has come out finally say, yeah, I am for Donald Trump, actually. When the entire country has realized there is nothing embarrassing about this, What's embarrassing is to take a perfectly great country and destroy it as they have. I'm not ashamed. You should be. At that moment, it's going to be pretty tough for them 10 days from now to look in the eye to America with a straight face. It's going to be pretty hard to look at us and say, you know what? Kamala Harris, she got 85 million votes because she's just so impressive. As the first Samoan, Malaysian, low IQ, former California prosecutor ever to be elected president, it was just a groundswell of popular support. And anyone who thinks otherwise is just a freak or a criminal. At this stage of the game, after 9 years of listening to their lies and finding every single one of them totally false, no, it's not safe and effective, and no, she's not impressive. It's very hard for me to believe the rest of us are going to say, you know what, Joe Scarborough, you're right. You're right. She won fair and square because she's just so impressive. I don't think so.
So I just found that interesting, specifically because it sounds a lot to me like he's trying to kind of get ahead of the narrative that even if they say Kamala won this election, you guys know what the program is. We're not conceding any ground. And I don't know. I found that a little bit interesting. I also liked the it's not effective and she's not impressive. He really wanted that one to hit. It didn't quite. He needs to work on his Martha Mathers ability to skew words to rhyme better. But
yeah, I mean, the sentiment is that's very interesting. I mean, can we not just pause on the irony of having somebody like Tucker Carlson lecture a bunch of people about? And don't get me wrong, Tucker Carlson is a powerhouse in the media. So but it's also like he's fucking rich. I mean, he's filthy rich. He married the heiress of the Swanson frozen food, empire. You know what I mean? Tucker Carlson has to be no less than like their family's got to be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And I'm not here to say that. No. I just think that it's kind of funny to have somebody who's way richer than probably the net worth of every regular person in that room combined.
The net worth of at least one section of that stadium combined.
For sure. You know what I mean? I just think that
take section 108, the first one in the balcony. Like, yep, he's definitely out earning that entire section.
For sure. Absolutely. And I guess that's really neither here nor there to the main point. I think that it is interesting. I don't know how I feel about. See, this is what I don't like. I don't like everybody trying to get ahead of it and saying that it's stolen or that we're really supposed to believe. I don't think that that's good. I don't think that that's rhetoric that helps anybody in the long run, because that just keeps stoking the fire. That if the results don't go the way of Donald Trump, then you have a bunch of people like him out there saying, well, this is why. And do you really think that, and maybe they're right. I don't know, but I just don't think that it helps. I don't know I know what purpose it serves, but I don't know if that purpose is for the better.
Yeah, it's certainly, I mean, that's kind of why it stuck out to me when I first heard that clip, was just like, man, for all the talk, and I think Tucker, I was about to say I trust that Tucker believes that. I don't even know if I necessarily believe that. I think there are a lot of people who do believe that. And if you believe that, then I almost think you probably do have a moral obligation to say something and to try to get ahead of it and continue to voice it like, hey, we don't have a fair election. And I know a lot of Republicans that do feel that way. I wish I knew a lot more people on both sides of the aisle that felt that way, even when their candidate won the election, which is part of the problem, is that half of the country sweeps that under the rug as soon as they get their way, and they go, nah, we're not actually don't need to look into that because I don't want to uncover my current president that we just got elected.
Most secure election ever. Moving on.
We got some Supreme Court justices to get in there before we get rid of this guy.
Right.
We got to make sure we have some lasting effect. But yeah, it definitely is adding fuel to the fire. I mean, it's a pretty clear signal to everybody in Madison Square Garden that night that, hey, they're going to try to tell you that Kamala Harris won this election, and they're lying to you. So when Kamala wins, don't you dare go quietly into the night because you've just been cheated out of your president.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that message. I really
And I don't
don't
think it's
because
exclusive to the right, but
no, it's not. It's
I
definitely
have
not
heard it on
exclusive
both
to the
sides, but
right.
that was maybe the most succinctly and like directly I've heard it put.
Yeah, and I can't think off the top of my head, at least in this particular. I mean, we've heard all the stuff in the past about Russia collusion, yada yada, Russian interference, but I haven't. Certainly could have missed it. I haven't heard anybody on the Democratic side talking about that if Kamala Harris loses, then there are shenanigans, and if it's out there, I haven't heard it. I don't know.
Well, that maybe that's part of the kind of ongoing rhetoric of each side, in that they're trying to paint Trump's side as election deniers right now. So
Mm,
they're a little quieter on it. But I did see the story already getting soft pitched. I actually put that down in one of these bullet points to bring up, that there is an article that got put out about election interference, especially in these last 2 weeks as we get closer, and that they're using AI generated post and AI technology to try to influence us. And it comes from all the usual suspects: the China, the Russia, the Iran. Um, and kind of what stuck out to me on this, to be honest, was the almost weapons of mass destruction-y kind of vibe. Because we've already been talking about Iran as being like, well, there's been some assassination attempts on Trump, and they're like, oh yeah, it's actually Iran that's paying these radical
sure.
American people to do it, which then kind of made me go like, man, I know there are a strong contingency within our government that has been running this government for a long time that really wants to go to war with Iran. So what is this little weird accusation blip? And then when I noticed it again come up today with that, hey, China and Russia are using misinformation, no news there, but they threw Iran in there this time, which I hadn't been hearing a lot of. And it's like, are we gearing up for some dramatic reveal of the cybersecurity risk that Iran has become, so that we can find
Mm.
an excuse to go into Iran?
That is certainly weapons of mass destruction talk. I mean, didn't we hear like a month ago from the Secretary of State that Iran was less than 2 weeks away from developing a nuclear weapon? I mean, it's all the same stuff. It's all of the same
I'll
rhetoric.
say weeks must move in dog years in Iran, because they've been
Yeah, they've been 2 weeks.
infinitesimally close forever.
Yeah, no, they've been 2 weeks away for 3 decades. You know what I mean?
It's just part of it. Climate change and nuclear capability. They just always seem to find
It's
a way
all,
to push that back.
it's
It's like
always just
contractor work with those two, you know?
It's always just right around the dude. That is like the most land of manana type attitude.
Land of
It's
manana.
right because it's always and it doesn't mean tomorrow. It just means not today. But it's just always right there. Oh, we're close. They're close. They're about to. And I hate all of that so much. I don't know. Like Iran's got problems. You know what I mean? Like they can't even protect themselves against beepers and exploding furniture. And I'm supposed to believe that now they're able to like orchestrate a large cyber warfare campaign against the United States. I don't know. They can't even like get missiles to land against like viable Israeli targets. You know what I
That's a
mean? It's
lot of
like
that Schrodinger's terrorist, where they're all backwards goat fucking herders in the middle of a desert, while simultaneously being the greatest threat to cybersecurity that the
mhm.
world's ever seen.
Yeah, it is.
You know,
It's
it's like, what are
Schrodinger's
where are we
terrorist.
at here? What is
Yeah.
the any fluff piece you see about American soldiers is always like they were so blown away by our technology, they thought we were the Anunnaki come anew to the Middle East, and yet anytime we're not currently in a conflict with them, it's about like how tremendously technologically advanced they've become, and how they're a threat to the entire world if we don't step in and squash them now.
Yeah, it's a tale as old as American foreign policy post World War II, at least. It's yeah, I wonder, but on your point about like the rhetoric, I have I that's interesting that they're trying to prime it up on and that's not and see that's the thing. It's like that's not good because I'm not it's right, so it's all a complex trolley problem, right? And to pull the lever to send it down the other track, I mean, if that's really what people want to do, then so be it. I have my reservations about what the other track holds just because it's a bunch of unknowns. And those unknowns could end up being really good, right? You can get your French Republic after you chop off the head of the king, but you have to live through the terror and Napoleon before you get there. And I don't like the rhetoric of, can we really trust it? Because that is probably the last myth that holds America together. And as soon as we sever that tie, like if we don't have that story that binds us together as Americans, regardless of who wins, we are still Americans. If that myth frays, then that nothing good will immediately come from that. Maybe in the future, 20 years from now, we will see our nice ANCAP society and we'll all be like, oh, well, that was, but you know what I mean? Like tomorrow, in the next week, in the next year, like nothing good comes from that fraying. Not to say that good can't come from it, but we're in the fire.
How close do you think we are to that unraveling? Because it would seem to me like there's already a pretty strong bifurcations, maybe not the right word, because it's not just two groups, but this splitting of personalities in America. Like, do we have a common American identity? I think we brought this up once on a show's past of like, do we still have that thing we had when 9/11 happened, where everybody was walking around with American flags, and if somebody even voiced caution about going into the Middle East, you'd punch them in their mouth and call them a terrorist. Like,
Right.
it was like unforetold patriotism there for a good year before we were like, wait, they weren't Iraqi guys? Why are we
Right.
why are we in that country? Hold on.
Right. I thought you said it was Afghanistan. What's this other country? Yeah. I don't believe in that. I think that the stories, right, and I've talked to you and Kiefer about this, like the stories that bind Americans together, it's not a reality. It's the stories that we tell ourselves as a society. And we don't believe in the same stories anymore. Once upon a time, we did. We believed in the same story around 9/11. Now, if the Chinese attacked, I know that there's a huge chunk of Americans who'd be like, good, down with America, welcome the new, you know what I mean? I don't think that it's possible anymore. I think that we are so polarized and we're so split. So I don't know if this is the tipping point, but we're well on our way. And if this isn't the tipping point, this is just one step closer to whatever that tipping point might be. I don't have like this is one of my black pills right now, that I don't see anything good happening in the next like 3 weeks to 5 years in American political, society. I don't know what it is, but and it could come as soon as next week, or we might kick the can down the road, but there will come a time where the split it happens, right? We are in, and I know this. I've said this a lot. This is one of my dead horses. We are in our balkanization moment, and Sarajevo is starting to heat up, and nothing good is coming from this. And I'm a firm believer in that. This is not Czechoslovakia choosing to each go their own way. We're witnessing full scale balkanization.
I mean, it could be very, like I said, Tucker, I brought up that clip there to kind of show how the right's priming up to basically say we're not believing it if they do win. I've also seen clips of, I believe it's a Democrat town hall where they were pretty openly talking about like the plan. If, we got to hit the doomsday button because Trump actually wins the election, this is how we're going to go about making sure he doesn't get certified. So it's pretty strong rhetoric on both sides that they're not going to just allow this election to go unchallenged, no matter who wins.
Yeah, and so where do you go from there? Like,
right.
How do you try to reconcile that? Because the last election, they had the opportunity, instead of trying to take the time and parsing it out. And, it's like a little bit of caution could have gone a long way. Said, hey, look, there's all of these accusations. I know that this is the normal time frame in which we do this, but is it going to kill America to move the certification back? You know what I mean? It's like, let's just chill out for a second. Let's
or like we all
out.
said immediately after the certification, if Joe Biden would have just taken the time to go, look, I understand there's a tremendous amount of mistrust of the American people towards their own electoral system. And I think that's a terrible crime against our democracy. And it's a show that the establishment has completely dropped the ball. And I'm going to at least give you this empty platitude that I'm going to be looking into this over the next couple years to make sure that this election moving forward has no leaks within the boat, that there is absolutely zero question that these elections are free, fair, and accurate. And they just chose to ignore that altogether.
Yep,
I mean,
sweep it under the
at
rug.
least act like you're going to do it.
Right. I think that I think that also Jeff Bezos squashing the Washington Post from endorsing Harris says an awful lot too. And in his paragraph, he said that, all-time trust in the media is at an all-time low. Like, they polled worse in the newest Gallup poll below Congress. It was like 31% of Americans believe that the media does a good or somewhat fair job at reporting the news.
Mhm.
And that says everything. And so if you have that low of trust in government, if you have that low of trust in media, how do you even, because at this point, like, the institutions that you would need to hold strong and firm to actually try to help curve it, people don't have any trust in it. And so, like, where do you go? Like, how do you start to try to rebuild any sort of common theme amongst Americans? And that, I think, that is probably like the underlying tone that is not going to change, right? Even if this election, I have no idea what's going to happen. I cannot predict the future in terms of, is it violent, is it not? Does everyone just accept it and move on? I have no idea. But the fact that half of the country is going to be not only unhappy but utterly distraught and potentially violent and refuse to accept the results of it, like, how do you even start to, because this isn't one of those, like Al Gore and Bush, right? I know there was a lot of people that were unhappy, but they're like, oh, well, Bush, John McCain and Obama. Oh, it's not the end of the world. Obama's not the end of the world. But we've moved, and whether this is true or not, right? Whether Trump or Kamala Harris is the end of the American experiment and the worst thing that's ever happened, it doesn't matter if that's true. People believe that it's true. And so how, like, what is supposed to be the bridge? I mean, Donald Trump blew the greatest opportunity to be a landslide victory that we haven't seen since Reagan. If he would have come out after they shot, this is a time for unity. I will be a president for everybody. We must, dude, on that stage, 5 minutes, boom, Donald Trump's getting 400 electoral votes. And he squandered the opportunity. I think that was our off-ramp for
That
on
was the
in our
opportunity.
in our timeline, right? Like, the gods gave us an off-ramp with that moment to say that this is, if Donald Trump chooses to take this off-ramp, America can be spared from the timeline you are currently on. And he drove right past it and flipped it off as he sped by.
That's an interesting thought, and that's what a lot of us were hoping would be the message. And it even seemed like there was maybe that first speech at the DNC, there was a little bit of that, and actually, as I think about it more, it wasn't even really the speech. It was like the reporting of Trump's feelings about the speech before he gave it was a lot of like, he's really had a change of heart. He's going to come out for unity. And then he just kind of didn't really hit that mark and never really went back to it.
Nope.
So I just missed that. I was going to ask too, I almost think another off-ramp opportunity, and maybe it's just too late. But what about the next election? When Donald Trump's no longer able to run, or hopefully he's too old to be trying to do it again if he loses.
Well, I mean, if he tries to do it again, we're in a full-blown constitutional crisis, and we're really going to see what people think. You know what I mean? He'll be running for a third
If he goes for a third? No, I mean, if he doesn't win this election.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see what you mean.
If he is running for his second term in 2 years or in 4 years,
he'll be
from now again.
82 running for, dude.
Pretty old.
There's no way, dude. I don't think that guy's like, I don't know if he's gonna make it that long, honestly. He's fat and unhealthy. Like, why is, like, nobody talks about that? You know what I mean? He says,
a lot of people don't know this. He actually only drinks Diet Coke, so he's pretty good shape.
Perfect. That's the elixir of life. It's like, we might as well, Aaron Rodgers talking about his new fountain of youth, cayenne pepper and water. Like, let's just give him Diet Coke, and the Jets are on their way to a Super Bowl. Like what? It doesn't make any sense. And I hope that Donald Trump goes away if he loses. I
guess that's what I was trying to kind of get at there. Is there any way that they could pull this much animosity for the JD Vance Vivek Ramaswamy ticket in 4 years? Is there any
Ooh,
way that those guys are Hitler again? That they're as bad as Trump? Like, I just have trouble seeing them able to continue carrying this narrative that it's all over, especially if Trump wins again,
mm-hmm.
doesn't run. And then it's like, I don't know, are you don't have this dictator narrative anymore. You don't have this, hey, he's unwilling to turn it back over when he's done with power.
Right.
He's allowing another election to happen. Is there any way you can point at JD Vance, who's also just simply more measured and well spoken than Trump and less likely to say things that end up in the headlines? Is that maybe another, and again, maybe just too late of an off ramp because the highway gets nothing but potholes for the next 5 miles to that off ramp? But
Right. Yeah, no,
but I
that's
just wonder if that would greatly help the tension thing, because it's like, I don't know, they've tried to do the JD Vance's weird thing and it fell on his face pretty quick because JD Vance comes across as a pretty normal guy, it seems like.
yeah. No, that's actually a really interesting point. And I think they would have a very hard time painting them as right, because it's Donald Trump. It's all very personal. Like, we're talking about somebody that has the track record that he does, right? Whether you think that it's justified or not, you're talking about somebody that's got 34 felony counts. You're talking about somebody that has treasured just troves of information against them. Grab them by the pussy. All of these there's so much ammo against Donald Trump that if he's not there, I think you'd have a really hard time painting Vivek Ramaswamy and JD Vance and kind of that next generation of the MAGA movement as bad as Donald Trump, because I think I think it's Trump derangement syndrome. And when the DSM 5 or 6, whatever the next version of all of the psychological,
DTS
maladies
get its own
comes
page.
out, dude, yeah, no, for sure. Donald Trump derangement syndrome should actually be a clinically diagnosable disorder, because some people have it. And if he's not there, even though that these are maybe his quote unquote hand selected picks, he's, because Donald Trump will be the kingmaker. I think that people would have a
Clearly.
very hard time actually painting somebody, because JD Vance and Vivek Ramaswamy, you may disagree with their policies, but you cannot say that they're dumb. And you cannot say that they do not articulate their positions extremely well. And I think it would be very, very difficult to try to put them in the same category as, oh, they're literally Hitler, when they can look in a camera and, they're young, decent looking dudes where, that they can say, like, what are you talking about? I'm literally Hitler. These are all I'm trying to say is that America is worse under, you know, 16 years of democratic leadership. And I think I think it'd be very hard to paint them with the same brush, even though they may come from the same tree. I don't know if it would stick.
Right. It's even if they have 100% of the same policies and you're able to rail on every one of the same kind of policy issues you have with Trump, the biggest one is that he is a potential dictator who refuses to give back power. And if he just gave it back for the second time, it's going to be really hard to look at the next Republican and go, he's also a dictator that won't give up power. And it's like,
right.
But you just said that about the last guy who did it twice. What are you guys talking about? Which I wonder how much it even takes the sting out of it with this election, because I mean, they've tried to throw that out there with Trump, and I guess it's worked on some level, because I definitely have some left leaning friends who will still say, like, Trump was trying to hold on to power, and you're like, yeah, but yes, and yeah, I even agree that he was probably doing some sketchy legal stuff to try to hang on to it for sure.
Yeah,
but he also did concede power.
He did
at
leave.
The end. He didn't.
He did leave.
Yeah, he didn't.
You know what I mean?
Didn't like reach out to military leadership and try to find a way to keep himself in there. And
because
at least some legal sleazy stuff for sure.
Because if he actually reached out to the military and tried to orchestrate a coup, we would have heard it by now. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Like John Kelly comes out, and like I said, I think in the last episode, I think Trump is not I think he's like a proto or pseudo fat, and he's not a proto fascist. He's a pseudo fascist that wraps himself in the cloak of populism. I bet that John Kelly, you know what I mean? I don't think that anything that he said was inaccurate. that actually checks out. Having listened to 8 years of Donald Trump, I'm sure that guy probably did say stuff like, "Yeah, I really liked his generals. Why can't I have generals like that?"
Yeah, I'd imagine that Trump, and I think that's kind of part of my issue with Trump and why I wouldn't vote for him myself is like there is no through line of political consistent ideology in there. I don't think he has a political ideology. I think
No,
it's the
he's for
greatest
Donald
point
Trump.
of Trump's ideology. Exactly. It's Donald Trump's a winner. That's what he really believes in. And he essentially, I think, really ran for president because Obama had the gall to insult him in front of a room full of other rich people, and he went,
Dude.
"Oh, we'll see about that. We'll see about that. Give me 4 fucking years, you piece of
Oh,
shit."
thanks, Obama.
It really is a lot of Obama's fault. I mean, and we've obviously that's something we've happily expressed on the show before, but like between Obama and the DNC, they elected Donald Trump. And without those entities, Donald Trump would have never risen to the presidency. It was just the push of the DNC and the media circling that they did to push him as a candidate and the straight up funding of his campaign because they thought he would be an easy win for Hillary Clinton to get over the hump.
And
they created this monster.
And we're seeing it right now where a lot of people are viewing Trump favorably because for the last 4 years, all we've been, you know what I mean? Like they've been browbeaten by it. It's just that the media is so unfair. And I'm not saying that Donald Trump deserves to be treated any better than he is. You know what I mean? Like, I think Donald Trump deserves all of the media hate and attention that he gets, but it is so one-sided. Where I think that Joe Biden deserves the same type of treatment that Donald Trump is getting. That's the ultimate point of, but a lot of people see the unfair treatment.
And it really gives, I mean, it lends credence to Trump's argument that he otherwise, in my mind, wouldn't have of this anti-state thing. Like, I don't truly, in my heart of hearts, think that Donald Trump's really against the U.S. established government all that much. I think that they've functioned perfectly fine when Trump was in office. They got all the spending bills through they wanted to, including the largest spending bill of any of our lifetimes during COVID. And they got to continue every war they were in. Sure, they didn't start a new one, and that's a big talking point of his, but their eyes is on that Israel war next, and Donnie seems to be in the bag on that one, so they're not too worried about the next one they want to start. I wouldn't think.
Look, I already killed Soleimani. He died like a dog, and we're gonna get all of the other Iranians.
Yeah, just like, what is the meaningful impact that Trump actually made that was against this deep state military industrial complex? Maybe you can say he slowed it down a little bit, but it's not like Trump wasn't dropping bombs all over the Middle East. This no new wars thing that's great. Sure, we didn't go into another country.
But he still
did not stop dumping bombs on everybody.
Yeah, I can't remember.
De-escalate.
There was maybe I'll see if I can find it real quick. The amount of bombs that he dropped during, I mean, it was not a slowdown by any means of the military industrial complex. Let's see how many.
Right, they're still selling plenty of weapons out there, so it's not like they're hurting for it. And it's not like we had some amazing repudiation of the power structure of our government under Trump. It continued, in fact, just strengthened the executive powers of our government. And for all of his rhetoric about draining the swamp, he gave it more power while he was there. So I guess that's kind of what I'm asking there is like, do we really think that he even could run with this anti-establishment message
yes,
if it wasn't for the establishment making this grotesque pushback against him?
Yeah, no, if they weren't, then he couldn't, but they are. So he is, you know what I mean? So like it would take all of the wind out of the sail if it wasn't such a concerted effort. And it's obvious. And I know some people that are probably maybe not even going to vote for Donald Trump, but acknowledge just how skewed the coverage of it is. And that says something. And I don't know. I think that there's so many different places that we can go because actually I want to see who dropped more bombs. I did see, so as soon as the very first thing I put in when I say how many bombs did Trump drop in his presidency, the top search is a foreign policy article, and it says Trump is dropping bombs at unprecedented levels. Yeah. And it's from 2017. And I don't know the political leaning of foreignpolicy.com because it skews so much to the outside of America. So I don't know if they have but I see all of these. Okay, so here we go. Al Jazeera, a record 7,400 US bombs were dropped in Afghanistan in 2019. That says something because this is after Obama has done the surge. You know what I mean? This is after we've redeployed more troops, more resources to Afghanistan. And now all of a sudden in Trump's presidency in 2019, a record level of bombs. So I think that's here we go. In 2017, America dropped at least 60,000 bombs. That means every day in 2017, the U.S. military blasted combatants or civilians overseas with 165 bombs. That's 7 bombs. Oh, dude, that's so many bombs.
Yeah, I pulled up an article that's and you can just see 2016 under
7
Barack,
bombs every
number
hour.
of bombs 32,000, and then the next year under Trump 43,000. So like it's there's a pretty obvious increase in just the number of bombs.
Yeah, so it's 165 bombs a day. That's 7 bombs every hour, 24 hours a day, with a 28% increase over the previous year from 2016. So instantly, so as soon as Donald Trump gets in office, like it's already an increase. It's already an increase of bombing. So yeah, this whole
I would show
idea
those
that
numbers. Basically, the next year get cut in half and get pretty reduced after.
in what 2018?
Yeah, 2018, according to this, at least to this one article I pulled up by 247wallstreet.com. Yeah, it goes down to 16,000 in 2018, 12,019, 2,800 in 2020. But also decreased under Biden the next year. So that was maybe more of a trend of submission in the area and lack of rich targets than it was necessarily the president himself.
I don't know because we had like.
But the point being that it's not like we stopped dropping bombs under Trump and had this. Oh, look, we didn't kill any children in foreign countries while Trump was in there. Like, no, we did plenty of that.
Right.
We killed plenty of children all over the world and ruined plenty of lives in the name of American oil interests based on lies from the George W. Bush administration, even after he ran an entire campaign to get himself elected on the lies of the Bush administration. He didn't bother to go in there and stop dropping the bombs.
No. And then that leads me back to like the cognitive dissonance of the two ideas that I hold in my mind, and it creates chaos. Is that literally nothing will change, everything will be okay, or everything's about to collapse and fall apart. And that's part of the continuation of everything will just be exactly the same and nothing will ever change. And I don't know, like maybe this time, right? Because as much as I anticipated the Joe Rogan interview, it was exactly what I thought it would be. A bunch of him dodging the question, him not, that was atrocious. And I'm really upset I suffered through 3 hours of that. Once it finished, I was like, well, that was a fucking waste of my time.
There really wasn't any substance in there.
And it was exactly what I thought it would be. And I'm actually curious about JD Vance because he will at least answer questions. And even when he dodges questions about, especially like, did Trump lose the election? That's really the only thing that I've ever heard him like actually dodge.
But skate around.
Yeah,
that's probably a difficult one for him because he was one of the proponents at first that was against Trump. And then kind of switched his position later on to secure this VP, or because of a legitimate change of heart, one or the other.
You never know. I mean, you can't. And am I supposed to hate on that man for taking a wonderful opportunity? I mean, if you had if you're a senator from Ohio, and you have the opportunity,
you were supposed to hate the politician that doesn't actually stand for anything and climbs the ladder any chance he gets. That's the
yeah. I should, but I also what I'm not gonna do the dude. If I was a senator at 39 and somebody asked me to be VP and effectively take over the torch.
All you got to do is say American you agree party. That men should be able to compete in women's sports.
And then what and then what the
And you get the
Democrats are just gonna
nomination.
come like clobbering at my door.
That's right. That's the only thing missing.
No way, dude. I'm far more likely to, dude. I'm nothing but a cog. Well, I'm a cog in the machine, regardless of what party. But I'm a standout cog in the Republican Party. I'll
This is
put it
true.
that way.
That's fair.
As a Democrat, I look just like every other Democrat. As a Republican, I stand out. They're like, damn,
Hell yeah.
that is not like he's not an old white man. Whoa.
Yeah, they've been trying. I mean, every election cycle, you see another black candidate that gets thrown out there, and they just can't find one that's compelling enough. But God, they would love nothing more than to have
Maybe
a
it's
well-spoken black man at the top
maybe
of the
it's me.
Republican ticket. It would
Dude,
be a
maybe it's
landslide.
me. I
You
mean,
could be president of the United
I've
States,
already,
Matthew.
I've already been I've already, like I've already had a little flirt with the Republican Party before. So I don't know. Maybe
Imagine
maybe
the
it
power
is.
you would have if you were the new governor of New Mexico as it turns red, too. The opportunity you left on the
Let's
table,
go.
Matthew.
Dude, let's go. And that's the thing. It's like I at least know myself well enough. I cannot speak for any other human. I would not turn my nose up at that opportunity. I would gladly be governor of this state. If you know what I mean. If I worked through the cards and was elected, I would gladly. If I was 39 and somebody offered me to be the VP of the Republican Party, I would jump on that.
Yeah, how do you not take that opportunity?
Absolutely, because it's just like you get to be the kingmaker for the next like you essentially got handed a party for the next 30 years. Do you know all of the wealth that comes with that? It's tempting. Am I supposed to say that, oh, I'm going to reject all of that on the principles? Dude, Nancy Pelosi makes $200,000 a year and has a net worth of $100 million. She does not get that through her good grace public service.
She gets that from being an absolute shark in the trade markets.
Yeah, for sure. And how she do that?
Brilliant day trader.
Yeah, no doubt. And I'm just saying, I know myself well enough that I would at least strongly consider that opportunity. Now, do I think that's treason? Absolutely. For $100 million, would I commit treason?
I'll be a treasonous little bastard.
Possibly. I'm not going to say no. That's my only point. I'm not going to outright.
You already turned into a politician. You were just about to say the truth there, and you realized, oh wait, this could get clipped for when I actually become the Republican nominee.
I mean, it's I leave myself the wiggle room because maybe at a certain point, right? Because I don't know what it's like to have $100 million. I don't know what it's like to have $1 million, and there might be a number. You know what I mean? There might come a point where it's like, I have more than enough. I am satisfied. I know I don't need this. I don't know.
It's a little bit like that argument I've made of when they had the World Cup in Brazil and all the Americans were crying about their watches getting jacked. And it's like, there's like a legitimate moral argument that dude should jack your watch because your watch, some fat American in his country could feed his family for 3 months. Like,
right.
Like there might be that one review that, hey, we know you disagree ideologically with this entire democratic system, but as a libertarian, how can you turn down this opportunity? Or just the simple monetary moral argument of like, this is something that's going to set up generations of your family.
Yeah.
This is something that, and especially if you don't particularly believe in the legitimacy of the democracy we live under, it's like, hey, maybe you should take a little bit of a reward here on the way out.
Possibly. All I am saying is that I don't know, and I'm okay with admitting that out loud to people. I have no idea. I think that I was making the joke earlier before we got started that there's not a price. I would do anything for a price. I've actually had that conversation. There are certain things that there's no amount of money that you could offer me to do because it would just be so morally corrupt and reprehensible that I will not take that blood money. But I don't know if becoming vice president of the United States is on that list yet. I don't know. Maybe along the way you find that it's like, I've got enough. Why do I need to sell out the American people and be the leech and the pariah that I have preached against?
You say that like one of the prerequisites to being the VP of the United States of America isn't going to Epstein's Island doing some shady shit on camera.
Well, if that's the cost, then I'm not in, because that is one of those things. Like, there's no amount of money that you could ever pay me to do stuff in like that realm. You know,
Right.
That's like if somebody came and said, dude, we'll give you $10 billion if you help traffic this child. I'm I will be poor tomorrow. Like I do, there's no amount of money that you could pay me to help do that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no amount of money that makes you stop dreaming about that at night.
Yeah,
Like, that
there's
that nightmare sticks with you for the rest of your life, I have
for
to
sure.
imagine.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. There are certain
And
lines that
also, it's wrong, and I'm a morally upstanding person. I guess I should maybe that's where I should attack that from, and not just that I would cause me mental anguish.
well, I think it would cause you mental anguish. You know what I
I
mean?
would
I
think
think
so.
that's some.
Although I
Do
guess
you
there
want
is some
to?
of that, like, you get dark enough at some point, maybe you just push all those bad thoughts out eventually once you
Yeah,
become so callous to it.
and I think that I was actually I took my business partner to the airport the other day, and as we were driving to Albuquerque, we were talking about that about like Diddy and Harvey Weinstein and all of these people, and and there was like some stories that were precluded in that I can't remember enough details, but anyways, like it led us to this conversation of like if you get that much money and power, you have to get weird. You know, like if you have the ability to live out
Those
certain
dopamine
fan
hits get fewer and farther
exactly, like,
between.
they
You
get
don't get
like,
that
you get
payoff anymore.
weird, you know, and it's like my business partner was telling me about this club that he was taken to early back in New York, blah, blah, you know, and it was just like, it was weird in there, you know, and that was kind of and then that led us to what's the conclusion of that, like, if that is a taste of a society that you had no idea existed 5 minutes ago, then the world that these people live in gets darker a lot quicker. And that
Mm.
leads you to places like Epstein Island, that leads you to act like Diddy and Harvey Weinstein and all of these other very powerful people. Because
It's
at
the Cuban cigar of the upper class. Your redneck
what,
buddy might pull out a Cuban and be like, "Hey, I got this illegal cigar I'm not supposed to have." They're like, "I've had a lot of Cubans. I need some little boy butt."
yeah, and I hate that resonates, but I think that once you get so much money and power and you get away with it, I think that it's only natural that you start to just get really weird, and that weirdness takes you down a very dark path. And I d-
Mm.
I because since we're on the subject, like Diddy, right? Like, so everybody's shocked that he beat her in public. Like, I can't believe he would beat her in the hotel. You think that that's the first time that she got beat, dude? If
Yeah,
you're
right.
willing to beat a chick in a hotel running for her life, no way. You've been beating chicks for decades. You are comfortable laying hands on whoever doesn't do what you want. That you can. And if you can't, then that's where you have your balance. You know what I mean? Like this is a guy that clearly has become accustomed to a level of, I don't know, I guess lack of repercussions that you and I could
Yeah,
never fathom. Like, you don't just, like,
right.
wake up one day and decide, like, "Oh, yeah, I'm gonna traffic children today. Oh, I'm gonna go to Epstein Island and fuck children. I'm gonna wake up and beat" like, normal people don't do that. The
Right.
only way
Or
that you
the
get
the
that
high
is
level D1 athlete who like is a complete shithead and people can't believe it. Like, why can't you focus on football? Why are you fucking around with all this? You're screwing up your future career. It's like, well, this guy didn't become a D1 athlete yesterday. Like, he's been a pretty damn good athlete for a long time.
and with
And
that
like
comes perks and power.
and like our 1A school that graduated 26 kids a year, where nobody even knows what the football team's record is outside of that season. Like, I got in trouble before for something small, obviously, like cheating on a test or being loud in class or whatever. And essentially the principal's response was like, "Okay, don't do it again. You have a football game this Friday." So like,
Right.
even for a subpar athlete in a school that's completely insignificant that was going to win no football games that year, we still got a touch of favoritism there. So
Right.
can you imagine what it is for the guy who has a completely unobtainable skill set for other people that everybody wants to throw millions of dollars at? Like, yeah, those guys don't have the same kind of social pressures that we have because they've been handed everything and they've never been told no their entire life,
And even if they worked for it, right? Like,
which they definitely
I'm
did
not even
in the
talking about,
athletic
like,
example.
this is it's like, I don't know if it's handed to but it's like, if you have that type of money and power, like, of course you're gonna be weird. And this is also why we should stop idolizing all of these people because they are fucking
Yeah,
weird. They're not normal. They're not real humans. You know what I mean? Like if you sat down and I will say that Donald Trump does a good job at like being personable But he's like, you know what I mean? Like, and also like, good on him for convincing half the voting population that you are the dude that they should support. I am impressed. I have nothing but the utmost respect for that part of the charade that he's. But like, these aren't normal people. They're not normal
No.
people. They're weird. And I don't say that as like the Democratic, it's like, oh, JD Vance is weird. It's like, no, all of you people are weird. Like the circle of the political elite that moves, you know what I mean? It's like there's nobody like if I bet if you sat down at if like you sat down at a bar and as the conversation develops, you find out that the person you're sitting next to is the editor, like editor in chief of the Washington Post. I bet before you find that information out, you're like, who am I talking to? This is not somebody that's connected to everyday life. I have that. I have that feeling that they're so out of touch. I don't
I mean,
know.
definitely. This is Zuckerberg with barbecue on the bookshelf when he had his at-home interview, or have you ever, I'm sure you've seen the picture of Hillary Clinton seeing what a regular apartment looks like.
It's one of my favorite photos
Let's pull
ever.
it up. I'll get, just because I have it pulled up, I'll share it with you just so you can look
It's
at it here for a
actually it's
moment.
one of my favorite photos ever. She is blown away at how regular people live.
Yeah, just the utter shock. And she's like, I think it's it looks like she's looking directly at those plants, so it's maybe it's a little bit of just like, what is going on? You're like, do you have vegetation coming out of your sink there? That is one of the all-time great images, and one I think so many regular voters should look at him. Just like, this is who's really running your country. These people who like cannot fathom the living space you live in, and yet they're telling you to your face that you should be happy with what you have while they ship all your money across to other countries to influence foreign elections and overturn governments and murder children and bomb synagogues. It's like they're completely detached from anything that is of a normal person's life. And I have to feel that they probably are that same sort of detachment from anything you actually care about. They're going to talk about it. They're going to listen to it and talk about it because they need those votes. And I'm not even sure they need those votes, but the narrative is that they need those votes. They're not just getting selected.
I think somebody has to vote. You know what I mean? I don't think that they just. I'm not convinced yet the CIA rubber stamps every election. I'm not convinced that it's not for nothing. I still think that the people do have
I would say, with the exception, this is the one,
say.
And this is, again, probably why I lend a little bit of credence to the people who are Trump supporters in this realm. But I think the animosity that they've shown towards Trump is an indication that he might be the first candidate that wasn't rubber stamped. I don't think that means he is a complete repudiation of the system in and of himself and in of his actions. But I think that the fact that he snuck through it was not supposed to happen, and it made them kind of shit their pants a little bit. They're like, hey, how did the straw man beat Hillary just now? That wasn't supposed to go down.
Which is something that's really interesting that I've also been focusing on lately too, and I've been talking about friends that are going to vote for Kamala, or they're like, how could they dare vote for Donald Trump? And this is a conversation I've been having a lot lately in the last month. It's instead of demonizing, right? Like, you guys have had 8 years to try to understand why half of the voting populations find your candidate so unappealing that they're willing to vote for somebody like Donald Trump. You have had 8 years to try to figure that out. But instead of having a moment of self-reflection and a semblance and a shred of introspection about, like, oh, maybe we should think about why half the voting population hates our candidates and policies so much that they are willing to vote for somebody like him. Instead of having that moment, everyone, like, they've stuck their head in the sand and they've thrown out all of the terms. They're racist, they're bigots, they're homophobes, they hate women, they hate black people, whatever it is. Enter bad argument. And instead of trying to figure out, like, maybe something that the Democrats and the establishment that has been the American political system for the last 40 years, instead of maybe we're wrong, no, they're wrong. It's the Simpsons meme.
It's
No, I'm
shaming the
not out of
voters.
touch. No, clearly I'm not an NPC. It's everybody that doesn't vote and think like me that's an NPC. It's one of those things. And it blows my mind that so many people still have that mindset that, oh, if only they knew the truth, then they wouldn't vote for Donald Trump. It's like and Democrats have had every opportunity to try to learn and understand why your candidates are so unappealing. Why half the voting population is willing to say,
Yeah.
fuck you, I'm
Get
going
the
with the orange
fucking
man.
message, Democrats. Get with the program. I'm not voting for a lady. Jesus Christ.
Enter misogynist. But it's one of those things too that, and nobody's going to take the opportunity. And this is, I guess, the greater point I'm trying to make is that instead of having the wherewithal and the self-awareness to think like, oh, maybe the candidate that we put forward, who is a black woman, is so unappealing, they're just going to say like, Republicans hate women. Republicans hate black women. And that may be true. I don't know. I can't speak for Republicans. I'm not a Republican. Like, I don't know. That might be true, but to try to like paint all of this is like, oh, they hate it because they can't stand a woman president. You want to talk to conservatives? You know who one of the most revered persons behind Ronald Reagan is? Margaret Thatcher. I mean, this is like there is like it's not a we hate her because of these immutable characteristics that she cannot control. We hate her because of who she is. And Democrats don't understand that. And instead of taking the opportunity to try to understand that, no. Everybody, if you're not going to vote for Kamala, you're a racist. If you don't, Joe Biden saying like, if you don't vote for me, then you ain't black. It's Barack Obama telling a bunch of black dudes that if they don't vote for Kamala, then they're just misogynoirs, which is a specific hatred of black women. I learned that term like 8 months ago, and I was like, what is that? Like wait, you have a specific term for hatred of black women? And instead of trying to figure out why your policies and your candidates are so unappealing, no, it's just that
wave your
people
finger at the other side. Tell them
exactly
we're all inept. You know that as you were gearing up, like the woman that everybody on the right actually gets behind. What popped in my head is like, how have they not running? Well, how have they not found Candace Owen a spot on a ticket yet? You got a black woman who's really
because
well-spoken.
she's recently been disavowed.
That's also true. She did do the worst thing you can do as a politician and got in the crosshairs of AIPAC.
She spoke against Ben Shapiro's beloved Jews, and so she's out. And so in 4 years, 2 years, maybe we will see her. But she made her deadly sin too late in the run. But I mean, dude, Tulsi Gabbard. Yeah, one of the two. But Tulsi Gabbard, dude, I think that she's probably worked for the CIA at one point, but I don't care. I'm down with Tulsi. I'm so down with Tulsi.
Man, that gave me goose pimples when you said CIA. I just got to go, oh no, you're probably right. That's that thing. I have so much trouble swallowing the pill of former CIA. Or like there's one that makes all the podcast rounds. I've seen him on Rogan and Schultz show and all those. He's the cool hippie ex-CIA guy with the long, like flowing black hair. It's all curly and beautiful. And
he's still probably in the CIA.
Front. That's dude. Listening to that guy talk, that is 100% a CIA mouthpiece. He's
still in it.
Talking to the CIA. Like I'm like, dude, oh, you're retired from the CIA at 35 and you're going on every major podcast in the U.S. Like, get the fuck out of here, dude.
Because
I feel that way about Mike Baker too, who I really appreciate Mike Baker on the Joe Rogan's podcast. Like he's very well spoken and he gives a lot of good insight. But it may be the third time I listened to him on Rogan. there was something he said that I was like, man, that sure does sound like a neocon pro-war
Talking
argument
point.
that he dressed up. And it kind of just hit me that like, oh yeah, I've had people who are quotations former CIA tell me that nobody is quotations former CIA, that you once you're in, you are in. And it kind of just
Dude,
made me go like, oh yeah, that's right. This dude is definitely still getting talking points from the CIA. And that's why he goes on Joe Rogan once a month,
yeah,
because the CIA is very interested in influencing listeners.
it's true. I can attest, and that's all I can say because I don't want to betray like any information of these people. But when you're in and you are good at your job and you are a brain that they value, you don't get out. You can try to
Yeah.
retire. I know somebody that they're on their fourth retirement from their job, and they'll take 8 months off, and then they will be called back and they will go and they will do their, you know what I mean? I know several people like that in in my life, but you don't get out. You just don't. You just
That's
don't get out.
I've never, I guess I'm trying to think of an example where it has been the opposite, and if I even trusted that person, but I've never even had somebody who is involved in the CIA tell me that that's not the case. They're pretty much all in those honest moments. They go, yeah, you don't. If they have a use for you, you get called back in. It doesn't matter what your retirement status is or what you wanted to do with your Saturday afternoon. If the
Yeah.
CIA wants you, they get you back in there, and they have all sorts of ways to make your life really bad if you don't cooperate.
And I will say that it's not even the CIA, it's just the government, you
The
know?
government.
Because these people that I know, they don't work for the CIA. Um, but at the same time, it doesn't matter if you are a brain and you are good at your job. Because I don't know how often good brains come along, even if you are, even if you are the government. How often do you get a hold of like an exceptional brain that can help you solve some pretty cool problems? And like,
Yeah. I guess
and
that's
what I
even,
do,
you could say the same for the private sector even. I mean, how many people just get consulting fees? I know guys who are
right?
experts in their fields, and that's all they do is consult, because it's like, why would
Isn't
I
that
hold
the
down a day
dream?
job? I'm going to make enough money by just taking occasional phone calls. I get to be off 6 days a week.
Dude, isn't that the dream? One day I dream of just consulting about
Of course.
about
Who doesn't want that job?
that's the dude, that's the dream of that. I work hard to one day be able to just consult and have an entire business of just like, oh, how do you solve these particular problems in this particular sector? I work like I strive every day to be like in 10 years to be able to do just that. Take phone calls, occasionally have to go to a site, occasionally some hands-on information, but yeah, that is the dream. And
It's a pretty sweet gig to get paid for sure.
yeah, but to the point where it's like the beast is real. And I don't know that I think what's most interesting, and this might be like a segue, and if it's not something you want to talk about, let me know. It's fine. I think what's most interesting is like knowing certain people that have been in government agencies, work government jobs, work for the military, yada yada. They're people that are agreeable humans. They're good people, and they actually do believe they want the best for this country. Now, whether the vision of the country that you would like, whether you would agree with that or not, that's up for debate. But these are not, you know what I mean? Like they're not evil people. Now, I'm sure they exist, and I know they do, right? I mean, anybody at the top levels, they're probably all very bad people. Um, but this kind of this the bureaucracy, quote unquote, that people speak about, like, oh, this is where the real problem is. Everybody that I know that has occupied those jobs, I consider them friends. I consider them good people. I would call them in a moment of need or crisis or counsel. And so I think it's really interesting that there's this dichotomy or that like cognitive. I don't know the right word. Does anything that I'm saying make sense? There's like a separation of the person in the institution or the person in
No,
the
I absolutely.
position.
I was making me think too that like, and maybe that's kind of what scares me a little bit with the Trump thing is like, if you don't have a political through line, if there's nothing you believe and you're just making policy, then it's extra easy to get corrupted, because it can come into just a simple moment of like, either I think this is the right thing or I don't understand the larger implications of such a thing and it sounds like a nice platitude, or just simply you can be talked into anything being the right thing. I also think there's like if you don't have any ideology moving going in, then what's the moral argument even that it's a bad thing for you to start taking money and start doing, well, this is the way government works, and they just don't understand it on the ground level because they don't talk to all these lobbyists and talk to them. And the only way you ever get anything passed is to spend hundreds of billions of American dollars in foreign spending, and maybe I'll get this little thing, and it's worth it to me because I'm not a libertarian. I don't understand economics at all, or printing of money devaluing the value of money. So I don't even see the moral hang up here. It's like I don't have anything to ground myself on as far as the correct way to run a government. Therefore, any idea that could be pitched to me could be spun pretty easily to be a good idea for the people. It just takes one empty platitude and one good point that this person makes pitching it to me. And those points are going to be pretty amenable when they come with $100,000 check in their back pocket.
Are you talking about like bureaucrats or politicians?
Yeah, just anybody in general that has governmental power. It could be either one. That if you're going in there and all you have is a ray of sunshine in your heart and a strong smile on your face, and you're going to do good for the American people, but you've done no studying into the way a government influences the culture of a population and the way that economics can completely destroy a nation if you do it wrong, and you don't understand any of that stuff, then you can think you're doing the right thing all day long, and it can be the wrong thing at every turn.
That's fair. I guess I don't know those people. The people that I'm thinking of, they're smart people. They're very cognizant. They're very aware. Like one of the there was so one of these people I'm thinking of. It was last summer. We're having some drinks, and this is somebody that's spent their entire life, you know what I mean? That has a very distinguished career, somebody who's very important. And this is also, they said this is like, if there's something that you don't feel is right and the government tells you to stay put, everything is okay, you should run as fast as you can. And so, you know what I mean? So I think sometimes these blanket statements start to paint the entire, and I don't know. And maybe this is the broader point is like, I don't think that the system that we have today is good. I know that we can do better. Am I capable and competent and confident to be able to roll out a better way to do it tomorrow? Absolutely not. I don't think that I'm that smart, and I appreciate people that think that they are and they do have a better, but it's like, dude, if like you put me in charge tomorrow, it's like, cool, you get to end the Fed. I have no idea how to stabilize America's currency. You know what I mean? It's like, cool, let's go to the gold standard. Well, there's not enough gold in the world to try to back up what you want to do. So now what? You know what I mean? Like I am not smart enough to try to solve these problems, and maybe I'm just all over the place right now.
I guess that's a lot of the good argument against Trump too, is like he's supposed to be this great delegator and this great businessman, and he's going to get in there and he's going to put people in charge of these sectors that he doesn't know how to run that can run them. And then, oh wait, we had a false start the first term. Oh, but Trump's definitely learned now because he had such a bad repudiation the first time, and like he's going to know about all these bad people. And then he goes on Rogan's podcast and he asks him about that, and he says, well, like people like John Bolton, and Trump goes, oh yeah, there's a lot of bad people in there, but the big benefit of John Bolton was that he scared the shit out of these other people, and he was actually very useful. And you're like, dude, the answer can't be that John Bolton was one of the good ones of your administration. And also, I accept that you learned all the lessons you needed to learn to be an effective president this next time.
No, I don't think that he's learned all of the lessons, but he's learned some of the lessons, which makes the second candidacy so interesting. Because who is he, right? Because he even said in that Rogan podcast, there's so many appointments that have to be made, and you have to start trusting insiders. You have to start trusting people that say they know about what they are talking about and who should be in that position, because you got to delegate that down. And so I do not think that he's learned the
I think that's
important
actually a pretty
lessons.
easy part of the job. I'm pretty sure that JP Morgan just sends you a list if you ask him.
Yeah, well, I mean, how did Rex Tillerson become Secretary of State? You know what I mean? Like the CEO of ExxonMobil becomes Secretary of State? Would you like and don't get,
Yeah, you think there'd be some no-brainers on that. That's
yeah.
I guess kind of the like you can say that, well, I had to delegate a lot of that and I didn't know which people was like, yeah, but you put the CEO of Exxon in charge. You put John Bolton, who you had just got done saying was part of the lie to get us into the Middle East and part of the
Yeah.
architect of half those wars, and then you put him in charge of the military. Like, I don't know,
There's
man. You keep saying you learn these lessons and you keep saying you're putting the right people in charge, but you were such a complete failure in that regard the first time around, and then your rhetoric seems to indicate that you didn't learn the lesson.
or I mean, maybe he did not, but I can tell you that you only get like sycophants and loyalists in the second one. And I don't know if that's good either, you
That
know.
is a good point. I heard it put that everybody already wrote their book. Everybody who was against him already burned him and wrote a book to try to make some money off of it after the first term because they didn't probably anticipate a second term at that point. So there is that at least the first round is eliminated themselves by saying bad things about Trump, which is the one way you can never be redeemed. If you ever challenge Trump, he's done with you. He'll grind you into the ground. I guess that's not even necessarily true. He's been really warming up to Biden these days. Have you seen this?
I have.
They're becoming good buddies. I wonder how much of it too is I'm still very skeptical that unofficial letterhead of resignation from Joe Biden that happened in the middle of the night when we all know Joe Biden is not awake was actually Joe Biden at all, and that it wasn't a little bit of a forced hand strategy, a little bit of the coup attempt from the Democrats within their own party to get Biden out of the way. And ever since then, he's been like putting MAGA hats on at firefighter events and saying bad things about Kamala Harris. I wonder if, though he's not all there anymore, there's enough saliency left that he knows he's pissed off at the Democrats right now.
Yeah, there's actually a lot there. I'd like to take like a quick little break, if that's all right with you, and then we can come back to that because I think there's definitely something there.
Yeah, I could use a urination.
All right, cool. Well, everybody enjoy some dead time.
Play the music at least. Oh, Matthew said on mute. That's right. I've perfectly intentionally curated music for this thing.
I don't even. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna hold up. I have all of these background music things. I'm gonna play "Feeding the Ducks" to see what it is.
Okay. See what happens. More electronic than I would have anticipated.
Yeah,
for a nature
this is not what I would have thought "Feeding the Ducks" sounds like. But anyways, enjoy "Feeding the Ducks" by StreamYard.
There was a point in my life when Matthew Billingsley saw my awkward young white ass struggling to dance. And maybe this is an argument for the inherent intuition of the African American man when it comes to movement and rhythm, because it would have had to come from within him, because I can't think of anybody in his family that would have been able to dance as a bunch of Church of Christ white folk. But as I was struggling to dance, Matthew broke it down for me one time. So just for all of you viewers, if you're ever struggling, you can't figure out how to hit that beat right, there's a very simple formula that I was enlightened to by Matthew. And it's just simply arms right here on the inside. And you pretend you're dancing with a skinny chick. And then a couple beats later, you widen them out here and you're dancing with a fat chick now. Do you remember telling me this when we were children?
Oh, for sure, dude. It's the T-Rex.
It holds true.
Dude, it's a T-Rex and a fat chick.
That's what it was, T-Rex and a fat chick. You bring them in close.
I'm a T-Rex.
And every fifth beat,
I'm a T-Rex.
Oh, she's getting bigger.
She's getting bigger. I'm a T-Rex. I'm a T-Rex.
I must give you credit, though. I have zero rhythm. I cannot dance. I feel embarrassed every time I've tried. I have often fallen back on that advice in my life to get through some awkward dancing moments.
It's actually all you really need.
It works. It works. It's not great. You're not going to look like you know how to dance, but you don't look like you don't know how to dance.
Amen.
It gets you right there in that middle point.
Fake it till you make it. Let's go. That's funny. I put on my headphones just in time to hear that.
I'm glad you made it back, so I didn't have to explain it, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
Although
all good.
You seem to remember it, so
I do.
I'm preaching to the prophet himself.
Yeah, I think there are certain things that are innate, and it's definitely not a race thing to something. But like when I was teaching drum lessons, you would know after the first lesson. It's like your kids either got it and we can continue lessons. I had some conversation with parents. It's like your kid's never going to be good at drums. And I can
look, I'm an honest man. I don't want to waste your money. Your son's retarded at drums.
Pretty much. Because I don't want to take somebody's money just to take, it's like your kid's just not going to be good at drums. And I can teach them the basics, but they're never going to be a good drummer. And so you can either, pay me more than my hour is worth.
Is that an innate rhythm thing that you pick up on? What tells you that a kid's never going to pick it up?
It is a rhythm thing. It's like either you have it or you don't, because you can teach like music theory, you can teach a lot of things, but rhythm is one of those. It's just that if you don't got it, if you don't have it, you won't ever get it. Like point in case, if you ever watch a group of white people clap or try to clap along with the music, it's like you can't teach. Like if I can't teach you how to clap on 2 and 4. You know what I mean? Like if we start breaking down 1, 2, 3, 4, and you cannot continually clap on 2 and 4 consistently for more than 3 measures, then I will never be able to teach you rhythm. You know what I mean? It's like you either can clap on 2 and 4 or you can't. And if you can't, then there's nothing I can do.
That statement unlocked an embarrassing racial memory in my mind where we went to a wedding and I was on the Hispanic side with my wife's family, and their Hispanic cousin was marrying a very white boy. And the music was going back and forth between like some cool cumbia type stuff, and the Mexicans would get it. Latinos and Latinas can dance very well. It looked great. And then it would go to like what I've always enjoyed the term pillow punching rock. Like, where are you? I fucking hate my mom and dad now. It was that kind of music. And they were all doing they were trying to shuffle, but because they were white, none of them could shuffle. And it was just 50 white people stomping the dance floor as loud as they could. And my entire Mexican family is like cocking their head to the side and side-eyeing me. And I'm like, don't put that on me, please.
That's not on me, dude.
Those aren't my kind of white people. I come from different types of white people.
My white people can clap on 2 and 4.
These are hipster white people. Well, my white people can't, but we're also not allowed to based on our religious affiliations.
Also fair. That's way more my sect than yours.
That sure is a good song, but I don't want to clap and go to hell,
just unlock child religious trauma.
You ever catch yourself doing that at times where you're like really or strongly arguing something and then you realize it's just something somebody told you in Bible school 25 years ago that you
Not
don't actually even
anymore.
believe yourself? You think
Not
first those
anymore,
out?
but I used to. Yeah, for sure. I used to.
I think it
And then,
still finds its way out in me every once in a while where I'll catch myself mid argument and go like, wait a minute. I only believe this because Miss Robinson told me this when I was 6. I guess this is actually not something I hold that strongly to heart.
yeah, no doubt. And then, I mean, that's an entire different conversation. That is super interesting. I'm always down to have it because I don't know, that stuff's super. I don't know. It's way doper than it is condensed in like in modern, in like the spoon fed version of religion. And it's like, dude, if that's the version of God that you got, like that's small. It's like if he's real, he's
Maybe it's because
way
maybe it
cooler
would have
than you're
helped a
making
lot
him out to
more
be.
if I'd have been in a Black Baptist church where they're having a fucking party every Sunday.
Hmm.
But I remember the notion of like, well, you can either go to hell or you can go to heaven, where you get to sing choir songs to Jesus all day for eternity, for the rest of eternity. Like, that sounds pretty bad too.
Right.
I don't like singing in the choir.
Dude, at least like give us I've been to I went to this super dope black church in New Orleans, and the drum dude, it was like the word it was that was not those were not the worship songs that you and I grew up with. It was, dude, like that was that was a high powered band back there, dude, like drummer breaking down, like going into some blast beats, and I mean everyone was going to town, and it was fantastic and it's fun. But anyways, that's like I said, that's a whole different conversation.
It is way more captivating. It seems like they're having a much better time. It's almost like the like, not that I ever was even in a position to buy into any of that, but the mega churches that have like the exorcisms at the front of the church. Like, if I in my susceptible younger years was looking for a sect of Christianity to be a part of, and I saw that kind of stuff, I'd be like, it seems like some shit's going down over there, guys. Like, that's pretty exciting. We have exorcised 0 demons in this Protestant church over here. They're doing like 15 a week at the front.
Dude, they're doing the Lord's work.
That's pretty good.
Dude, they're out there kicking out demons. What are we doing?
I've never seen this preacher exercise
Singing
any
without
demons.
a
That's all I'm
piano.
saying.
Like, oh yeah, this is really moving the needle.
Sure, our youth pastor can shred a guitar, but has he ever fought the demons of Satan directly? Does he even know any Latin?
Yeah, that's
maybe one of my favorite. And this is definitely an aside that we won't get too deep into, but in the realm of conspiracy and supernatural stuff, there's a strong line of the Christian leanings in that, and there's a lot of talking about confronting demons and the name of Jesus, like putting them in their tracks, like completely. It's got this power to the name, and it stops. Which I always thought was kind of weird, because it's like Jesus wasn't the original name though. That's the name. That's the English version. Like, does Jesus work the same? Is it just no matter what language? And then at that point, it's like, if you're just referring to God, does it have to even be a derivative of Jesus? Could it be like, if you're truly calling the higher power? And I just thought that was an interesting aside, that they're like, yeah, you just got to scream Jesus at any demon and it'll shut them down. It's like, I don't know, does that just work with any name? What is
yeah, right? Do demons like understand English?
Argument that I guess the argument would be that the power is in the invoking of the Almighty God's name rather than the name itself. But I don't know, it just seems like an odd one to me.
No, that I've actually never thought about that. Do like they yeah.
We had I can't remember if it was the preacher or the youth pastor.
Understand German? Do they understand Russian? Like, if you
say it wrong. Like, oh, this demon
just like, oh, sorry, dude,
Portuguese,
I don't speak.
Sorry,
Latin.
he didn't understand. Yeah, it's like he doesn't speak any Portuguese. Sorry, I didn't understand your gay Spanish.
And then do they have translators that then like translates? Like, oh
no! What name did he say? Ah, shit! All right, you got me. I heard we had a religious leader in my church that would tell a story about a Rottweiler that rushed him and his wife on a walk one night. And he panicked and he just screamed in the Lord of in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, I command that you stop. And the dog stopped. And it was like this big sermon that he would do once a year about the power of the name of Jesus. And even as a devout Christian and a young boy, I would hear that and I would go, yeah, but also if you just yell at a dog, they usually stop. Like, oh, this guy's not intimidated by me.
There's that. Nothing to say that it's like, I don't know, because you and I have talked about this an awful lot. Maybe we should do like an entire episode one day about like our religious and spiritual views, because we're not just, you know what I mean? I think we have like some interesting takes on it because we were raised.
Yeah, oddly enough, I came around to that thing that used to be one of my favorite stand-up jokes. It's like how grotesque it is, the person that's like, I'm spiritual, but I'm not really religious. And I like struggle not to say that exact phrase when people ask me about religion now. I'm like, I sound like that idiot.
I agree.
I'm that stupid hippie.
Yeah, I would agree. It's
I've seen a couple DMT elves.
I'm not religious, but I am spiritual.
Some say maybe the most spiritual.
So much. So before our quick little break and our little interlude into this, which is always fun to talk about, we're talking about like, I think there's been some reporting that the Biden or the Harris campaign hasn't known what to do with Biden because he's reached out to say like, let me help you, and they're trying to distance, you know what I mean? And they're like, oh, we'll get back to you about this, and
that is a tough tightrope that she's having to walk right now too, because there's this part of her that really needs to talk about how everything's going to be better than the Biden campaign or Biden administration,
and how it's different.
And then there's also this part that's like, it's hard to throw a guy under the bus, though. You know,
you can't. Yeah,
there's a lot of other questions that get raised. Of somebody asked her that kind of recently in one of these interviews, which was like one of the tougher questions I've seen
like,
anybody ask.
When did you know?
When did you know? When did you know that Biden was senile? And she filibustered her way out of it, like she does every question that's semi-difficult, but as any good politician will do.
I bet say none of them answer questions. So when people scream that she won't answer questions, like find me somebody that does.
Right.
You know, like
you get that a lot where people are so completely zoomed into this election that you hear a lot of that stuff where they're like, well, it's same as like Donald Trump is an election denier, and it was like, yeah, so is every president in my lifetime. Like they all do this shit. Why is this? But to the layman, if you see it in a CNN news article or a Fox News article and you don't ever pay attention to this stuff, then it does seem very new and poppy and terrible for democracy. When in reality, it's like, it's pretty par for the course.
It is par for the course. Like none of these people, they're all, I can't remember this person's name. And I know I've said this before, but this guy came on, you know, he used to be a DNC, or I think he was just a staffer, and he worked for both Republicans and Democrats. And then he got out and made his fortune in something else. And he's like, all of these, they're all bad people. You know, like none of them are good. And I don't know. We should not revere politicians. That's for sure.
No.
Yeah, we should definitely like
much of anybody. I say that a lot, even with celebrities too. And it's like you should not have complete irreverence for any person you've not met in person. And even then, it's tough because you don't really know a person. But to have that kind of complete loyalty and
that's gross.
Yeah, starry-eyed, just exuberance for a person that you've never even met. It's like you have no idea outside of the image they have chosen to present to you who they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something like yesterday or a couple of days ago when we were driving to the airport, we were talking about Diddy, and then how, because like I'm a huge Jay-Z fan, and so is my business partner, and they're like, oh, they're trying to wrap him up. And I was like, dude, if he came out that Jay-Z's guilty of all this stuff, like I'm not gonna, that's not going to come as a shock to me. Like I know that we like him as an artist, and I know that we like him as a businessman, but that doesn't, like, if they came out and was like, oh yeah, he's complicit in all of this, I'm like, yeah, like I'm supposed to be shocked that this dude is a bad person. No way.
Maybe America's Dad was that Overton window for me. Like as soon as Cosby went down, I think it was maybe the last time I would ever have that level of like, this celebrity's awesome. It's like, oh, if that guy's a piece of shit, then Lord knows.
And maybe some of them are. I don't know. But I think that it is super interesting about how I just can't wait for all the books about this to be written, about like the inside the book that's going to be written about the actual events of how Joe Biden went from saying that I'm certainly the nominee to now on a Sunday afternoon saying I will not seek re-election. Because there's
maybe that's the
way more
next
to that
great play.
story.
Maybe that's the great play for the Democrats in this next election. Once they fall on their face with Kamala, then in 4 more years, the thing is, look, you guys were absolutely right about these. As I'm saying this, admitting any kind of faults, probably not the route they're going to go, but to go, hey, look, you guys were right. We didn't run a primary. We, for far too long, tried to just interject our candidate in front of you in the same way that Donald Trump is the kingmaker in the Republican Party. And we're not going to be the party that forces a candidate like J.D. Vance down your throat. So we're going to actually have a primary and be the one party that didn't have their candidate pre-selected. Maybe that's the spin.
That's never going to come from the DNC. That type of self-reflection and that type of humility is they're incapable of it. I'm not going to say that they're not people, but I bet that if a regular person sat down with them, I bet like if a regular person sat down with them, it would be like we would reach the uncanny valley. That it's like you could recognize it as something that is very similar to a person, but is distinctly not human the way that you know. I think that I really do believe that about like all of these politicians and all of these media and elites, that they would occupy the uncanny valley for most humans or most Americans if they actually got to sit down. You would be like, oh, wait a minute. There's something like you are you look like a person. You have 2 eyes and a nose, and your mouth moves when you talk, and your larynx, manipulates airwaves.
There's that thing when your
sounds.
eyes blink vertically that kind of gets to me.
I mean, first, I'm sure there are some lizards out there, but and I think that's like most humans would be very off-put if they actually got to interact with these people. I don't have a reverence for them. They're not good. They're not good people. They're bad people.
That's kind of the argument, and it sounds now like officially the Joe Rogan podcast for Kamala is not happening. But that was essentially what everybody was pointing out was the great fear is like, if she sits down for 3 hours to have a conversation, it's going to be pretty blatantly obvious that this isn't a human being.
Right.
And that she has no substance behind anything she's purporting to run on.
It's true. And not to say that Donald Trump has an awful lot of substance, but I will tell you one thing. He is at least, you can fault Donald Trump for all of the very, very many faults he has, but he is not uncharismatic, and he at least can act like a person.
I was wondering if it's even less that, because he is a strange human being. He's not like any human beings I know. So that's what I'm getting at. But he's been on television for a long time. So we've all known this already about Donald Trump. And he's been, even though he is a little out there, and just the way he talks is weird. Like, I don't know any people who really talk. He kind of has a little bit of that like New York tough guy thing to it, which I'm sure is informed by where he grew up, but it's different too. Like, he just has a very odd speaking pattern. The order that words come out of his mouth are a little bit strange at times. But we're used to it. We've heard him talk for a long time on TV. So he had his own reality TV show for a long time. So there's not as much of a shock value, I guess, to like, what the hell is this person? Because it's like, oh no, it's Trump. That's what and he also has been maybe not ideologically consistent, but as far as his personality, it seems pretty consistent. Trump seems like he's authentically Trump, if that makes sense.
Every time you see him. And maybe this is the redeeming quality of why somebody would want to vote for him, is that regardless of how you feel, you at least know who he is. Because, and this is the thing, is like, he cannot be anything but Trump. He can't shake it. He is incapable of not being Trump's biggest fan and Trump's biggest cheerleader and Trump's biggest dick sucker. He is incapable of being anything but Donald Trump.
Which is evident in this election now, because if he was to, I mean, he already has the base locked down. If he could just scoot a little bit to the left and hold that position, it'd probably win in a landslide. but he's incapable.
He can't because he is Donald
is.
Trump. And let me tell you, Joe, I hear you. We have to weave. We have to, we have to weave back. And
the weave talk. That's, by the way, the weave is going to be worn out, is my prediction, in political pundit circles over the next couple months. I think that's going to become a very big deal, and it's going to start to be attempted to be used. And I guess this is on the contingency that he actually wins the election and we continue to talk about him. But I think that we're going to see a lot of political pundits on the left that start demonizing the weave because of how much he has brought it up. That it's going to start becoming the new filibuster. Oh, he's just weaving. He's not even going to answer the question. He's doing his fucking Trump weave again.
The weave.
I got a strong feel, specifically because Trump has been talking about the weave a lot. I don't know why, but I've heard several different podcasts where he's brought it up as of late. And so I think that is a strong candidacy for a talking point of illegitimizing Trump in the near future.
Yeah. But I guess the next, and this goes back to something we were talking about earlier. Does anyone care? Like, because nobody trusts the media. And I think that, I think the timing of when Jeff Bezos actually kiboshed the endorsement for Kamala Harris, because everyone knew, like, it's not that they were about to endorse Donald Trump and he is like, oh no, we can't have this, so maybe the timing is a little weird. Like, maybe you should just come out like last year and be like, hey, because of integrity in journalism and all-time low trust, we are not going to be endorsing a candidate. But that's got to say something that Jeff Bezos is willing to do that. And, I've heard like the number, like 200,000 people have canceled their subscription to the Washington Post in the last couple of days because of this. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is that nobody, even if the media does try to like demonize the weave, like who cares? Back to this like fraying of the myth of America. We don't get our news from the same place. We don't believe the same things. There's no common thread. And for Jeff Bezos to be like, I think Jeff Bezos actually acknowledging it is huge. To be like, dude, nobody trusts us anymore. Nobody trusts print media anymore. And the only way that we're going to even try to repair the damage that we've done with the American people is that I can't let my editorial board endorse a candidate.
That's another one of those indicators out there that makes me think that Trump is going to win this election, is watching the Mark Zuckerbergs and the Jeff Bezos and several of these other tech billionaires that have kind of softened on their Trump positions. To me, indicates that they're a little bit worried that he's about to be in charge of everything, because they definitely didn't have that stance.
No, they're hedging their bets.
A couple months ago,
They're hedging their bets.
I think you're absolutely right.
And they're worried. And am I supposed to be upset by these billionaires hedging their bets? No, not really. I don't find that outrageous, because if I'm Jeff Bezos, and I have the competitor of the space industry, Blue Origin, and now Elon, you know what I mean? And now buddy Elon, well, of course I'm going to take a little bit lighter stance. Of course. Because I want those big old fat government contracts too. Like, it's one of those things, like, I may not condone it, but I can understand it. Like, it's not these outrageous and unreasonable plays. I can at least understand why these people are making these decisions.
Do you think Bezos turned over an office desk the day that Trump's or Elon's Musk rocket just landed back in that tower?
Oh, he had to have.
You think that pissed him off?
He had to have. It probably scared the shit out of him, because that's impressive as fuck.
Yeah, it is.
Do you know how, like, to catch a rocket? And this is one of those things that they're not. It's not 1-to-1, but there's an app called Space Flight Simulator. Download it and tell me how easy it is to get a rocket in orbit. I play that game religiously, and it is hard to get a rocket into orbit and then re-enter orbit, let alone try to go to the moon. I've killed many, many men on my missions to the moon. In fact, I've yet to successfully get a rocket to the moon. It's a fun app, but even something as simplified as that, it's not easy. And so, I mean, the science and the engineering to be able to catch a rocket, fucking impressive. And we're not giving him his dues as a supervillain when it comes to that. Like, that is the most supervillain shit ever. Like, only supervillains catch rockets.
Do you
Only
think
they
that
do.
maybe the only thing I can think of that is more supervillain than that is creating the controlled opposition in Jeff Bezos and forcing him to model himself exactly physically after Lex Luthor to throw the scent off the trail?
All right, he did look when he got on those steroids. He did definitely look like Lex Luthor. You're totally correct in that.
It's Elon throwing the scent off the trail. Oh, he's the good billionaire. He's not the one that looks like Lex Luthor.
And also, like, are we supposed to sit here and pretend that like Elon and Jeff Bezos don't talk? That
Right.
you know, like I'm supposed to sit here and believe that they're sworn
And what other
mortal
peers do they have in
enemies.
this world?
Just them.
If you want to sit down and have an actual conversation where you're drawing your peers' advice, who else are they calling?
Yeah.
You know,
He's calling Mark Zuckerberg. He's calling Jeff Bezos. They're all calling each other. Like, of course they do.
right?
They're
They
all
look at guys like Mark Cuban as small fries. They're like, those guys are piss ants, man.
right. Like, why
Those
would
guys
I
have
talk to
no
some?
control.
Why
They're
would I
not
talk
in
to somebody
space.
with a
They're
30
not
million,
gathering data off of the entire nation.
$30 billion net worth? Ugh. Like,
Ew.
Gross.
Yeah,
Who let the
they have that
peasants in
same
this room?
they have that same face when they go into his mansion that Hillary goes into the apartment with.
Or that when they get on his private plane, it's like, It's like,
You don't make the strippers live on your plane. Where are they at?
It's like, oh, it's so small.
I noticed that your cocaine drawer was empty.
It's and it wasn't even the good stuff. Like, do you even know the cartel?
Do you even control the cartels?
Yeah, that's none of these people are good, and that's like, and I know that this is the dead horse that I beat often, and I don't mean to be the
You
wet
beat off the dead
rag.
horse?
Sometimes I try. It doesn't go as well as you think it would. It actually goes exactly how you think it would, but
It's diminishing returns over time as the flesh starts rotting away.
but you know what, man? I'm a winner because I keep trying. All right, can't bring me down, baby. Nothing gets in front of me and my.
I don't know if I'm ever going to get the horse there, but I tell you, the smell's making it harder and harder for me to finish personally.
Oh, that's good. I forgot even what I was going to say. That's funny.
Yeah, I was about to say I jumped right on it, right on your point there. And
it's all good. I don't even remember what I was going to say. Doesn't even matter now.
Oh, all right. Well, I have maybe one more question I want to get off my chest before we wrap it up here. That clip we showed earlier
of Tucker
Carlson,
okay,
getting ahead and riling up the crowd and getting them in a position, a lot of rhetoric about how we're not going to believe the results of this election. If Kamala Harris wins that election, is that going to be his Sandy Hook moment? Is that going to bring down his media empire because he is now the voice of the next insurrection of America?
I want to say my gut reaction is no, because he's not singling out certain individuals. And we've seen, so I don't know if you ever watched, have you watched that documentary about the Alex Jones trials?
I haven't actually.
The trial, I watched that, and it left me with a bad taste of Alex Jones in my mouth. It did. It was,
you bought the propaganda, huh?
Perhaps I did. Perhaps I ate the onion. You know, perhaps I did. Not to say that there aren't. You know, I'm not just blanket category about Alex Jones always wrong. He's always right. That particular documentary, and I know the angle that they painted him in, but it was one of those that's like, those were bad takes. And there were actually, and so the point I'm trying to make is that there were people that you could point to, that you could bring into a court of law and say that your actions damaged us. They hurt us in these ways, you know, and whether or not, like, if it happened, like, to have like parents cry, like having people like deface their child's grave and send them videos of them pissing on the grave, like your child's not really here. Like, I have a hard time believing in the conspiracy of like, oh yeah, let me just fake a dead child. That's a big, you know what I mean? That's a big conspiracy that I've yet to reach. Where it's like, oh yeah, this is, yeah, let me just fake a dead child because the deep state told me to. And I will say, and they're very hard images to find, but if you can find them, it's very disturbing. Just if you and they're not easy, but if you can find the image of the Sandy Hook bathroom in which a lot of these kids died in, if you can actually find that image, because I did once, it's not good. And I don't know who fakes that. And you know what? Maybe Matt's just a shield because he ran for office and he worked in the government, and I've just, you know what I mean? Maybe I'm just a status cuck, but I don't know. I have a hard time like getting behind some of the details of that. And so, but the point I'm trying to make is like, who is Tucker Carlson defaming? Rudy Giuliani had to turn over his apartment today to the 2 Georgia election workers that he defamed, along with his Rolexes and a couple of other pieces of personal property. You know, like that's like bummer, Giuliani. Sorry you lost your nice mansion and some nice watches.
Sorry, good.
But I don't know who, like Tucker hasn't called anybody out specifically to actually for someone to have a defamation case. Does that make sense?
Right, I see what you're saying. I guess it would be not a defamation case in my mind, but rather like a high treason charge, essentially.
Maybe.
Like you are now encouraging insurrection.
I mean,
and that the damages are, who did he hurt? Well, we don't know yet. We have to wait on the riots after this election to find out who he hurt.
No, if that's the take that if that's the avenue that they're going to try to pursue.
And moreover, he's harming the entirety of the American democratic system and therefore every American citizen, Matthew.
Yeah, for sure. And if that's the road that they will that they want to take, then they will be able to prosecute him. I mean, let's take Donald Trump in his 34 felony counts. I have a hard time getting behind a prosecution where the jury instructions say that you need only find him guilty of one of these 3 charges, and you don't have to reach a unanimous decision on it. Like if he is guilty of one of these 3 things, then you can convict him. Like, you stack the, you know what I mean? Like, of course you're going to get a prosecution there.
Yeah.
And so if they can do that to Donald Trump, they can do that to Tucker Carlson, and they can do that to the rest of us, which that part of the message is not wrong.
Back. Where'd you go?
Oh.
Now you're back. There you are.
All right, cool. Yeah, no, I got some spinning wheels. You disappeared too.
Yeah, it was odd. Both of them spun out at the same time.
Yeah, but it would not shock me at this point, because that's also what people do. Like cheaters always accuse their spouse of cheating. Mm-hmm. And so when Democrats are accusing
Republicans that accuse gay people of ruining society always are fucking dudes on the side.
Yeah. I mean, is it not interesting that the last 2 places that have held a Republican convention, Grindr app gets shut down by traffic?
I heard somebody disclaim that by going, it always happens though, even if the Democrats are in town too. You go, yeah, but we expect it from the Democrats.
Yeah, no, that checks out.
The part is that you guys are the ones also shutting the app down is pretty interesting.
Yeah, you guys say that, yeah. And so I think it is that tactic.
It's like if they had a DNC and every gun got bought in the city, I'd go, hold on.
Right.
What happened there?
Right. Yeah.
Are you putting the guns in your mouth? It was a dick joke. It didn't land.
No, I got it. I was just making the.
That's impressive that you get your entire mic in your mouth like that, though.
Dude, don't worry about me. It's hard out there.
College days.
Dude, it's hard. Dude, it's not even college days, dude. It's hard out there today. I'm not proud of what I do, but the boys got to get a business off the ground one way or another.
Thanks, Obama.
Not proud of it, but dude, everything for the better of everything for a better tomorrow.
Talk about decisions that haunt you later on.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think about it? About the question you asked.
About sucking dick?
No, not about that.
About sucking. What was the question
good.
I asked? I got completely sidetracked with our
Tucker
difficulties. Oh, about the Sandy Hook thing.
Or just like they're going to prosecute him, persecute him.
I don't know that I feel super strongly about it, but I could definitely see there being, especially if there's a large governmental reaction to Donald Trump after this election. If they are going after Donald Trump, then I bet Tucker Carlson's on the list too. And I do think there's something worth being said about Tucker was on one of these kind of uniparty news networks for a long time. And when he started opening his mouth about things he shouldn't have, even though he was the #1 rated show on the network, he got kicked off. And I don't think anybody in that established governmental system and the ecosystem of controlled media is very happy that he still has the largest news show in the world. I think they're all a little bit pissed off about that. And they would probably love to take that away from him, you know? Yeah, it doesn't make him feel good, for sure.
They have to hate it.
Especially right after he started saying the naughty things he wasn't allowed to say, that where they were supposed to have fired him into obscurity. And instead, they created the world's largest news organization.
That is a white pill. That is a white pill that people
makes
like
you feel pretty good.
Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson can have very large shows, larger than anybody in prime time on any cable news network, even after being ostracized. That is cool. I'm down with that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's a very positive sign that hopefully people are waking up. And this is all part of if you and the Kiefers and the Jamies of the world would have just waited a little bit longer instead of moving on to y'all's post-libertarian thing. This is the slow process I'm talking about. People are starting to wake up a little bit to the evils and the lies of government, and eventually they will realize the libertarian utopia we all need to live in.
Well, if you are right, I will have no trouble. I will not be happy about it, but I will concede if you are correct. I actually pride myself on not being so stubborn that I cannot recognize when I am wrong. However, we're not to that point yet, so I'm not saying shit.
Fair enough.
You got anything else, Logan?
I think that's it for me. I got everything off my chest I liked.
Alrighty. Well, thank you very much for listening to Against the Mob podcast. We were very pleased to be with you guys live streaming. We'll be back here. Are we live streaming on Tuesday? Anyways, we'll either be here on Tuesday live streaming or we'll be back here Wednesday talking about our not broadcast live stream. We'll see which one happens. We might be back to back, we might not, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Anyways, thank you very much for tuning in. You can find us here on YouTube Live, also wherever you get your podcasts, because I am a good boy now and I release episodes because my days of being a degenerate and just hoarding all of our amazing content just for us is over. I've turned a new leaf. I'm out here. I'm out here doing the things. Anyways, we appreciate you guys. We love you. Stay safe. Stay sane. Most importantly, these are troubling times. Don't let it get you too down. There's something good in the universe.
Get ready for the revolution.
Yeah. So start lifting your weights. Start running. Make sure you got your ammo. There's more. There's way more than that. Make sure you know how to grow food. Make sure you got your stock of antibiotics. Make sure you have useful skills. Anyways, everything's all good. We'll be all right, regardless of what happens. Until next time, we fight against the mob with people over politics. See you next week. Nice.
I think you're still recording, just FYI.
Oh, I am. Thank you.
For sure.